The March the 16th, 2021 public hearing for our FY 2021-2022 school board or school operating budget is now called to order. And in calling our meeting to order on tonight, we're so delighted to have everyone with us as this public hearing unfolds here at Dunbar Middle School Auditorium. We do want to acknowledge that all of our meeting protocols are to be observed as printed in our featured board docs items for the agenda for tonight, and that we are having this as a YouTube channel live and later to be rebroadcast on our station. And so let us govern ourselves accordingly with that matter. Section B of our public hearing tonight is regarding electronic participation in meeting, and due to all of the continuity clauses provided to us by Lynchburg City Council and our appropriate policies outlined in BDD, we would now entertain a motion for the electronic participation of school board member Susan Morrison as it relates to medical reasons as stipulated in our policy. Is there a motion for the participation of Susan Morrison in tonight's meeting electronically?
I move that we
I would
allow-
second.
Been moved by Dr. Carter, seconded by Dr. Brennan for the electronic participation of school board member Susan Morrison. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, and the motion carries. Ms. Morrison, thank you for your participation tonight electronically. And of course, at this time, I would like to make sure that all board members know that you are more than open to communicate with Ms. Morrison to communicate with us as chair. I will be very intentional in including Ms. Morrison, and as the day unfolds, Dr. Edwards will let us know staff members that are involved so that we will know who's here and who board members may be able to interface with, because this makes us one and makes us a community together. Tonight you have, moving to section C of our public hearing, for our agenda approval. The agenda has again been featured for all board meetings members for this meeting tonight. And as we move through this process, I'll try to explain, particularly when we get to the public hearing piece relative to the budget. Is there a motion to approve our agenda tonight as presented?
Move to approve the agenda.
Been moved for approval by Dr. Nillis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second again by Dr. Carter. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, the agenda has been approved. And as we celebrate the spirit of what it means to be citizens of the United States of America, let us please stand now for our Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and we welcome everyone who is participating with us tonight. Section D of our public hearing will include a special presentation. And during this virtual presentation, Ms. Jody Gillette, Director of the Lynchburg City Schools Education Foundation, Inc., and Dr. Edwards will recognize the generous sponsors of the Excellence in Science Scholarship. And so without any further words, I'm going to call on Dr. Edwards to bring on our very capable Director of the Education Foundation, Ms. Jody Gillette.
Absolutely. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. This is probably one of my favorite nights of all, where we get to celebrate and honor our students. And that would not happen if it was not for the generosity of our donors, which I will thank in a bit, but also for the hard work and behind the scenes tireless efforts of our Education Foundation. So I am pleased to partner with them and work with them, and it's going to be an exciting announcement tonight, and I would like to welcome Ms. Jody Gillette, who is the director of our Lynchburg City Schools Education Foundation.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much. It's very exciting to be here this evening. So to begin with a few formalities before we get into the exciting part of the evening, Chairperson Dr. Coleman, Vice Chair Dr. Brennan, school board members, and Superintendent Dr. Edwards, good evening. My name is Jody Gillette, and I'm the Executive Director of the Lynchburg City Schools Education Foundation, and here this evening to announce the 2020-2021 LCS Excellence in Science Scholarship recipient. With all that we've experienced over the past year, it is a particular honor to be here to announce this very special award. And although we can't gather in the boardroom together, we do have some very special guests, including sponsors, principals, directors, and our guidance director at EC Glass here to help to support and celebrate this year's recipient. So one of our guests is Mac Frankfurt. He is the president of the Lynchburg City Schools Education Foundation, and he would like to share just a few words with you.
Thank you, Jody. And it really is a happy occasion. And it's so nice to see on my screen some faces of old friends that I haven't seen for a long, long time. And I hope you know who you are. There's a couple of Steves and Rose, and good night. This is a fun evening for me. As Jody said, I'm president of the Ed Foundation, and we are really honored to be able to work with such generous people in our community in order to offer a scholarship of this significance. We thank all the donors very much.
All right, thank you. So to share just a little bit of history, in the fall of 2013, Dr. Charles Pryor Jr. and his family announced a 4-year, $25,000 scholarship to be awarded every school year for the 4 consecutive years to an outstanding senior interested in entering a science-related field of study. Dr. Pryor is a graduate of both EC Glass High School and Virginia Tech, and he's very proud of that. I can tell you, I don't think we've done an interview yet where he doesn't mention his maroon and orange colors, and that's wonderful. He spent 25 years with the Babcock and Wilcox Company, serving as president of the Nuclear Power Division. While in Lynchburg, Dr. Pryor served as a member of the Lynchburg City School Board and past chairman of the Lynchburg City Schools Partners in Education Program. So he's a long history of valuing and supporting public education and understands the important role that strong schools play in the success of our students and the economic health of our community. We thank him for his vision. After taking a year off, we were thrilled to be able to announce the return of the Excellence in Science Scholarship to the Lynchburg City Schools for 5 consecutive years, beginning during the 2018-2019 school year. This scholarship was designed once again for a top science or engineering student who plans to continue their education at an accredited college or university in a science or engineering related field. Scholarships clearly benefit the student recipients as awarded funds ease the financial burden of an advanced education and creates room for students to take advantage of often unpaid research and internships that contribute to their educational experience and professional development. But a scholarship such as this benefits more than just the student recipient. Lynchburg continues to grow as a national leader in nuclear engineering and a regional leader in medicine. Our community is also an incubator for entrepreneurship and host to many small, medium, and large engineering manufacturing firms, all of whom rely on a workforce that offers strong math and science skills. In order to be a thriving community and support these industries, it is essential that we maintain strong public schools to cultivate and attract employers and retain top employees. This Excellence in Science Scholarship is a unique offering, not often seen in public school settings, and is designed to work towards this goal. This LCS Excellence in Science Scholarship impacts our students by rewarding academic success and investing in a student's post-secondary education. education, mitigating the high cost of a quality college education. Our STEM programs by attracting top students to those important areas of study. Our school division by demonstrating commitment to public schools and the right for all students to have access to an outstanding education. A scholarship of this magnitude will work to attract and retain top scholars. Our businesses by developing a local workforce that is strong in math and science, and by attracting and retaining a qualified workforce. Our community by adding to its economic health, including strong property values by investing in quality public schools. This LCS Excellence in Science Scholarship would not be possible without the vision, extreme generosity, and commitment from our sponsors. The LCS Education Foundation and the Lynchburg City Schools would like to take this opportunity to recognize and extend our most sincere appreciation to the following sponsors for the opportunities that they are extending to our students and the prestige that they are bringing to our division. And although I cannot hand you your plaque of recognition this evening, one will be sent to you in the coming days. And I would just like to recognize BWX Technologies, Framatome, the DTE Energy Foundation, Mr. and Mrs. Lee and Sharon Ainsley, Dr. and Mrs. David and Judy Franz, Dr. and Mrs. Charles and Mary Jane Pryor. Three of our sponsors, four of them are here with us this evening, three of whom would like to take a few moments to share some words. So I'd like to start right now with Mr. Rex Jividan, the CEO of BWX Technologies.
Thank you, Jody. Just wanted to make two brief points. One is BWXT is a nuclear technology and manufacturing company, and science education is our top benevolence priority, followed by cultural enrichment and economic development. So this Excellence in Science Scholarship fits squarely into our priorities. It's really our bullseye in the community, and we are very well pleased to support it. Second point is I do want to congratulate this year's recipient. I know you haven't said it yet, but his background and ambitions are remarkable from what I've been reading, and he certainly seems to be very deserving of this award. That said, there's a little fly in the ointment. It looks like he's pre-medicine instead of nuclear engineering, so we'll need to nudge him over to change his major eventually, but otherwise, looks like a great looking recipient, and we're very well pleased to support him.
Wonderful. Well, we'll do what we can to influence him to maybe pursue a career in nuclear medicine.
That's perfect.
All right, good. Next, I'd like to call on Gary McNona from Framatome, the CEO of Framatome.
Thank you, Jody. So, global issues such as the pandemic, healthcare, climate change clearly show there's a need for more bright young people to pursue a career in science. Here at Framatome, we're honored to support students like the recipient who are dedicated to science and practical application of research and study. We believe in people who are committed to a better future. And I look forward to hearing more about the research of this recipient and the work in human health and longevity, and selfishly hope the research leads to a longer life for all of us. We wish the best of luck as he pursues his goals. And to the other sponsors of this scholarship, and in particular, Charlie and Mary Jane, who got me engaged in this, thank you for your continued commitment to seeking out some of the most talented and promising students in Lynchburg and helping secure their place in academics and eventually in a type of work that makes a difference, like nuclear medicine. We're for that as well. It's an honor to join you in this mission. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for those kind words. And Dr. Pryor, would you like to share a few words?
I'm always nervous when someone refers to me as doctor, that someone might ask me to do something for a headache or a stomach ache or something. But anyway, I'll take it, Jody. Just a few points. One is really happy to be part of this group of sponsors for this scholarship. And I do believe, as you mentioned, we have positively influenced the 6 accomplished students that have received this scholarship before now. I think they're all engaged in either advanced research, graduate education, or part of industry, and being productive citizens in society. I hope that's a sale, Judy.
Yeah.
I want to thank you, Jody, and all the staff of Dr. Edwards, you need to know that your staff in organizing this program and sorting through the applicants, coming down to the finalists and making the very, very difficult decision on the award winner has done an excellent job under Jody's guidance in this. I couldn't be more proud of the process. And once again, congratulations to this year's winner. And it is the most difficult thing in the world to make a selection with 4 or 5 finalists, all of whom are really outstanding achievers in the top of the class, 4-point plus grade point averages, 1,500 plus SATs, and incredible outside activity in the community and so forth. So this is not an easy task to do this, but congratulations to our winner again. And I would point out, Jody, that I think of the 6 winners previously, at least 4 of them have gone to University of Virginia for undergraduate education. So
And yet you still support this.
let it be known that I still support them in spite of this one blemish in their history.
Touche. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Pryor. And so I now would like to turn the floor over for just a minute or two to Dr. Edwards, in case she would like to share a few words to our donors.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jody. And thank you, Dr. Pryor, for acknowledging the hard work that the staff has put in. And I am so blessed to have them because I would not want to have to make that choice. And they do a great job of working with the Ed Foundation and the finalists. And to all my donors and the community, you have to know how special it is to have such dedicated people who donate money for these kinds of events. And I've said this before when I first came down here, that this is probably the most generous giving place that I have ever worked, where there's a giving spirit to support our kids. So I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you to the donors. This is my 3rd year here. In the first year, I was wide-eyed and excited, but the fact that you keep doing this speaks volumes to your commitment to Lynchburg City Schools and our kids, and we are so grateful to have donors like you, so thank you. Back to you, Joan.
Wonderful, thank you. So, so one of those staff members is my #1 partner in crime in this particular effort, and that is Maria Yeager, who is an LCS curriculum and instructional supervisor, and she will have the great honor of making the announcement of who this year's recipient is. Maria.
Thank you. Good evening. It is an honor to come before you this evening to announce the 2021 recipient of the Excellence in Science Scholarship. This is a wonderful evening. The Excellence in Science Scholarship comprehensive application process was launched in November 2020. It was open through January of 2021. And at that time, applications were due to the director of school counseling at each of the 2 high schools. A school-based team was assembled to review the applications, and the top 5 in each high school advanced to the team in central office, who then scored the applications based on a standardized rubric. Now, this process included a written application, a letter of interest, 3 letters of recommendation, and an official transcript. This stage of the scoring typically includes the scaling of students' SAT or ACT scores. But with the status of standardized testing unknown at the time we were preparing for this year's scholarship application, we replaced this traditional rubric with 3 short answer essays to gain greater applicant insight. From this scoring process, the top 5 finalists completed a Zoom interview with the selection committee, and the scholarship is being awarded to the top senior science student as determined by the selection process. Now, before I announce our recipient, I want to state that just as in previous years, and it's been said tonight, the applicant pool was exceptional, and that all the students who applied were outstanding candidates with a passion for science and engineering, each in their own way, and have most definitely very bright futures in front of them. I also want to thank everyone who made this scholarship a reality. The sponsors, the LCS Education Foundation, as well as all the school counseling teams, the principals, and the teachers. Now the fun part. Now for the announcement. This year's recipient is an athlete, an artist, and a scholar who attends both Central Virginia Governor's School and EC Glass High School. As an athlete, the student competes on the EC Glass cross country and track teams and coaches a summer running team. As an artist, the student performs classical violin and during the pandemic, composed, directed, and produced the Orpheus Project, an international collaboration of over 40 musicians in an effort to uplift the community. As a scholar, our recipient has a huge passion for medicine and has pursued educational opportunities outside of school to further medical knowledge, such as an internship with a physical therapist and enrollment in some medical programs, which allowed for the study of different fields of medicine. As a student at the Central Virginia Governor's School, this year's recipient conducted a research project. Now let me make sure I pronounce this right. Analyzing the effect that different macronutrients have on regeneration of Duxia tigrina, a species of flatworm, that included a research paper that placed in state and regional competitions. The recipient is also currently studying anatomy and physiology at Central Virginia Governor's School. Now, during college, the student plans on conducting a research project to analyze the effect of exercise on the health of an individual, focusing on the nuanced differences between varying age groups. After undergraduate studies are complete, this student plans to pursue further education to obtain a doctorate in either physical therapy or some field or sports medicine. Now, finally, our recipient placed second in zoology category at the Central Virginia Regional Science Fair, presented his research project at the National Consortium of Secondary STEM School Symposium, and received an honorable mention at the Virginia Junior Science Academy in Health and Medicine. And it is indeed my privilege to announce the 2021 LCS Excellence in Science Scholarship recipient, Dylan Miyang.
Just have to do a woot woot, sorry. Congratulations, Dylan. It is an honor to be able to make that announcement. Would you like to share a word or two?
Yes. I really, I wanted to take a time to thank the sponsors. Thank you to PWX Technologies, the DTE Energy Foundation, Framatome, as well as Mr. and Mrs. Lee and Sharon Ainsley, Dr. and Mrs. David and Judy France, as well as Dr. and Mrs. Charlie and Mary Jane Pryor. And I'd like to take the time to thank the LCS Education Foundation as well. You all really gave me this opportunity that I very much appreciate. So thank you guys.
You are very, very welcome. And although you couldn't hear all of the cheering because everybody's being polite on their audio mute here, I do want you to know that we all are really just glowing and so happy for you. And we have one very, very special person who could not be here this evening, but has recorded a very special, truly out of this world message for you. So Austin, if you could cue that up.
Hello, Dylan. My name is Leland Melvin, and I just want to congratulate you on the Award of Excellence in Science, being the recipient of that this year. I'm really amazed at your letter and how admirable it is to try to help someone get healthy, both through nutrition and through other, medical practices that will help them have a better life. So thank you for, giving of yourself in that way. And I can't wait to see what you do in the future to help either save people's lives or enhance people's lives. I remember when I was on the space station, the thing behind me, I was the crew medical officer because we didn't have a doctor on the mission and I had to draw blood and do different things. But I did see that when I gave out, different medications and things, it made people feel much better. And I think, when we care about the feelings of other people, we will help advance our civilization. So I look forward to seeing your journey and Godspeed on it. Thanks for what you're doing, and congratulations again.
Fabulous. So I just want to close the program to say, first of all, Dylan, when this is all over, go check out your front stoop. There should be a little something there waiting for you. And if you don't mind, if you could take a photo, if your parents maybe could take a photo of you so we have something to mark the moment, that would be great. And I just want to say congratulations. We are really, really excited to learn more about you, to get to meet you through this process, and to be able to offer you this great opportunity. And just so you know, we're going to be staying in touch for at least for the next 4 years. So you've got me for a while. But I'm looking forward to hearing about your journey. So thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to everybody on the LCS side who supported this. And thank you to my board members who to keep me straight and get these programs going. So thank you, everybody.
Jody, if you will, Jody and Mac and Dr. Pryor and the entire Lynchburg City Schools Education Foundation, the Lynchburg City School Board wants to thank you for this great news and presentation. And if we were in person, we would do a photo op for Dylan here. And since we can't do that, I am going to ask that our board members who are able, including Ms. Morrison, who will, of course, be participating electronically, if we would just stand and clap for a great accomplishment for Dylan and for Lynchburg City Schools. Thank you all so much, and congratulations, Dylan.
And I'm sorry, but I was a little remiss. Dr. Edwards, do you want to say anything to the student?
It's okay, Jody. I thought you were being mindful of the time, but I just want to congratulate. I just want to congratulate Dylan and say, you know, Ms. Yeager pulled it out when she said he's a AAA in athletics, arts, and academics, and he represents the best of LCS and everything that we want for our children. And as you saw just from how he graciously accepted the award, he is a humble student, a helpful teammate, and just an all-around good young man. So congratulations, Dylan. Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dylan, and thank you, Jody, for a great presentation and for this highlight, of course, of even the evening. And I know board members typically would have something to say at this time, but maybe even in board comments you might share at the end. All right, everybody's okay. We'll move on. And again, that was wonderful. Item E on our agenda for the public hearing is our FY 2021-22 operating budget. And the way we're going to operate tonight, board, if you would please allow the chair to guide us in this way. During this public hearing, Ms. Lukanich, who will be introduced by Dr. Edwards and Ms. Lukanich will give their presentation, and there will be no questions from the board during this particular presentation. And then following that, we will move into the opportunity for public comments. Of course, in that section, there will be no discussion from the board to those who are making public comments. When we conclude our public hearing and reconvene for our work session, that will be the opportunity that board members would have the opportunity to raise questions and discussion. And we'll lay out that format that every board member is able to participate. And so with that being said, we're now in section E. Dr. Edwards.
Yes, thank you. And being mindful of time, Ms. Lukanich and Ms. Pugh and myself will go through the board presentation, and I just want to let the public know that this will also be uploaded to board docs, so you don't have to busily take notes. You'll be able to get a copy of this actual presentation in addition to the other two documents that are up there. So, next slide. Okay, so our budget conversation began in January, and as you can see, there are a list of dates for which the board has met through either board meetings or work sessions to talk about the proposed budget. We are down at the bottom of this list, which is March 16th, our public board hearing, and our next event will be at March 30th at City Council at 4 p.m. And the documents, one of them is the spreadsheet that we've been using for the past couple weeks to review the proposed items. And the other one is the actual budget, which outlines the revenue and expenditures for the operating budget as well as, well, the revenue for both the operating budget and grants, but the expenditures for only the operating budget. So that's something we need to point out. Next slide. So I want to start with who we are. As you can see, we have 9 very dedicated board members, 8 present here, and Ms. Morrison present with us online. And here are some of the things that they do in addition to showing up here at the board meetings every other Tuesday. They do serve on 3 board committees. We have 4 advisory committees to the board, which you've seen give presentations here. They sit on the boards of the Gov School and Laurel and the STEM Academy as well. They are the liaisons for some of our community groups, such as the Ed Foundation and Beacon of Hope. And if that's not enough, I work them, and we have 5 different policy work groups which they meet with me. So anybody who thinks that the board commitment is just the 2 to 3 hours that you see on Tuesday evenings every other Tuesday, I think this board could tell you that they work very hard in service of our children, staff, and families. Next slide. A little bit about us, our schools. You know, we have 1 early learning center, 11 elementary schools, 3 middle, 2 high, 2 alternative programs, and of course, there are 4 specialty schools that are associated with LCS. We often get asked about our employees, full-time and part-time, and I have broken them down there on a slide for you so that you can see that 93% of our staff provide direct services to our students. They're mostly in the school buildings. They are the ones who drive the buses or members of our school nutrition program. So that's pretty good. Next slide. More about demographics. Our student demographics, we have about 7,572 students, and we also have an additional 276 pre-K students. As you can see, there are some percentages for our student demographics in terms of economically disadvantaged students with disabilities and our English language learners. So a very diverse population here in Lynchburg City Schools. Next slide. Oop, you're already there. Okay, a little bit more on the demographics. You can see our breakdown by race with Black, white, 2 or more races. And I've also put up there the city demographics. And I just want to take a minute to pause, because if you notice, our school demographics look very different than our city demographics. Something that I found interesting when I was doing this research as well. Next slide. So often, Lynchburg City Schools, they say, what do? We have educational services. We're in the teaching and learning business. But in actuality, we're more like either a Fortune 500 company or a mini city. If you look at all of the services that we provide, including library and media. We deal with parking, especially when students get their parking permit. We have a registrar, our clerk, emergency management. We're in the vaccination business. We have a whole team that does that. Arts and entertainment, sports and recreation, and even for our staff, retirement planning. So it's much more than just providing educational services, although that is the biggest part of our business. And we have staff that support all of those areas for Lynchburg City Schools. Some milestones, next slide, that we've accomplished, and I found these to be fun facts, that we've driven over 5.8 million miles every single year. That's like going to the moon 24 times. We've served over 1.5 million meals in a single year. Kudos to our nutrition staff. This year with the pandemic, we really pushed out a whole bunch of devices, over 15,000 Chromebooks, iPads, laptops, desktops. Can you imagine the number of Zoom meetings we've had with all of these devices? And this does not include phones and other devices. Lots of property, 1.8 million square feet of property. And if you're on my custodial team, that's like cleaning 39 football fields every single day. And they do an excellent job of it. And in terms of our buildings, one of the things that we talk about is our facilities plan. And here are the ages of some of our buildings, with RS Payne being built in 1925 and the Dunbar West building being built in 1940. Our core beliefs, mission statement, every child by name, by need to graduation, and we often add and beyond, right, Dr. Coleman? Because
Exactly right.
we care about where our kids go once they leave us.
That's right.
There are our core values, which really came into play this year during the pandemic as we had to look at every child by name and by need, and we continue to do that. So speaking of the pandemic, next slide. Let's talk about some of the things that we've accomplished during this pandemic. Teaching and learning never stopped. We opened our doors for in-person learning in the fall. And we have not stopped opening our doors for in-person learning. Our kids have been here from grades pre-K to 12 in a hybrid model for 2 days a week. And some kids come 4 days a week. Some kids get extra tutoring after school on the evenings, during the weekends. But we've done a lot of things, and as you can see from the faces on the screens, our kids have been engaged. Next slide. Speaking of engagement, we've continued many of our CTE programs, and we wondered how we were going to do that in the middle of a pandemic, because many of these programs are hands-on and face-to-face. But as you can see, our kids still continue to study nursing and culinary arts and automotive and even robotics and engineering during the pandemic. Next slide. In addition to academics, it was important for us to focus on athletics. We heard from many of our families that said, this is important for our kids too during the school year. So we supported athletics and have some championship track teams as a result of our support of athletics during the pandemic. Next slide. And as we learned just from our scholar that we just honored, Dylan, we've also supported the arts. Theater continued, art continued, music continued, debate team continued. All of these things have been going on in Lynchburg City Schools while we were in the middle of this pandemic. So I am so proud of our staff for the work they've done during this time. And lastly, community engagement. We would not be here if it was not for our community. And you can see we have some talented educators. We do learning in school, and we'll even come to your porch and sit on your porch and help you learn. We've got community members, One Community, One Voice, our sheriff's department, our police and fire department that partner with us to go celebrate kids. We've had things in the neighborhood. We were just recently in the Darrington neighborhood celebrating with those families, giving out instructional materials. So the learning is inside our buildings and in our community as well. Next slide. So as we build a budget, one of the things we need to think about is meeting our family and community expectations. And we heard you. There's more need for in-person learning, which we are going to talk a little bit about when we get to the work session, what we're going to do for fourth marking period. In the fall, we're going back to 5 days a week for all students in the fall. We continue to hire talented staff, provide students with social, emotional support, and to address any kind of mental stress and trauma. We have special programs to address learning loss, and we're still trying to provide safe transportation for our students. So kudos to our transportation department who is trying to think outside the box as we look to getting more students back. All right, next slide. So I started to give you a picture of who we are, what we represent, and what we're about, because that's important to understand our budget strategy. And the way that we've built our budget, it's sort of a modified zero-based budget because you can't be completely zero-based. Each school building has a base budget for operating. You need heat, you need electricity, you need water in a building. So it's not completely zero, but it's modified in its needs base. We're focusing on using our resources wisely. And this is really important for the current year. So I'm gonna slow it down a little bit here. I have a graphic that shows where we were in FY 2020 in terms of our revenue sources. We don't generate revenue here at Lynchburg City Schools, maybe a little bit through facilities rental, but really not enough to sustain our staff and our program. We get our revenue from the state, from the federal government, and from the city. And if you look at what we are attempting to do for FY 2022, which is next school year, we understand that this pandemic has had some costly effects on our community, our schools, as well as our families. And just listening to some of the conversation at our city council, we understand the challenges that our city faces. We're also very blessed here in Lynchburg City Schools to have received CARES funding from the federal government, from the state government as well. So one of the things that we looked at to build our budget, and we really were very mindful about our request of the city. We built our budget based on what we needed and came up with a number that was upwards to about $42 million. And then we had to sit and say, how are we going to fund it? Are we going to ask the city for more money to support our students and staff? We know that once students come back, we have to address learning loss. We have to address social emotional concerns that students may have. Some kids have not been in the building. They've been remote all year long, so there's some socialization. But we also recognize the dilemma that the city's in. And we were fortunate in receiving CARES Fund and CARES 1 in terms of $2.5 million. And then even more recently, as we were developing the budget, an additional $12 million. So if you look at our budget strategy, one of the things that we decided to do is rather than ask for the full value of what we needed for the operating budget, we decided that we were going to use some of the CARES funding to help out during this time of crisis. And I have to mention that it's during this time of crisis. This is not a long-term sustainable budget strategy, and I need to say that, and you've heard Dr. Gupta say that several times at our meetings. It's not long-term, it's not sustainable, but we are in the middle of the pandemic crisis, or at least we're coming out of it. So for us, this is where we wanted to be in terms of doing our part and being a team player and saying, what could we do to help out not only our own students in Lynchburg City Schools, but how can we help the city during this time? Now, in a year or two, CARES funds will be gone. CARES funds will be gone. We will no longer have access to those resources, and we'll have to get back to a budget strategy similar to what we used in 2020. And you see I projected that for 2024. But I really think that it's important as you look at the budget, you're probably wondering in some places like, why did this go down? Why are they cutting money? We're not cutting money. We're just supplementing with the resources that we have in our CARES fund. All right, so let's dig into the numbers. Revenue by the numbers. And you can see on this slide all of the revenue from state and from federal and others. And I put a little note there so that you can see where that $12 million of CARES money has been added. If you look in FY20, we had about $10 million worth of grants. Those are our normal grants. And then if you look at the projected budget, there's upwards to an additional $26 million. And that addition of 12 is the CARES funding. That is the part and parcel of the money that we want to use to supplement our budget going forward. Next slide. Okay. If we look at the expenditures by numbers, and again, I'm going to pause here. Our expenditures does not represent all of our expenditures. This is just what is being expended out of an operating budget. So imagine you have a checking account, a savings account, money market account, and IRA account. We're only talking about one of those accounts. So as you look at this budget, I need everybody to understand that these expenditures are just coming from the operating budget. So you'll see this personnel services of $60 million does not include any of the CARES funding. You'll see an increase in health insurance and wonder what that's about. And if you recall, the board approved or supported a 7% increase in our health insurance costs. They are going up. There are some other things on this sheet. There's $28,000 so that you can see where were those GovSchool slots? Where does that fall in here? And then, of course, due to some changes in how we had to do local matches, we did some transfers from accounts to make up for the required local match. And I'm just going to take a pause and ask Ms. Lakonich if she has anything to add on this slide.
No, you're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then I will keep going. Next slide. This shows where the money goes. And often when you're saying, let's make cuts, I want you to notice that 60% of our budget is personnel services, and an additional 24% is also related to personnel because that's the employee benefits. So together, that's about 84%, 85% of our budget is people. So anytime a school division wants to make significant cuts, it's not pencils, it's not paper, it's not programs that you have to cut, it's people that you have to cut. Next slide. So our priorities, and I love this little slide here, kind of timely after having the Super Bowl, but Tom Brady has been in the NFL for about 20 years, and we want to compare him to one of our teachers. I'm a teacher who's also been in LCS for about 20 years. But when you look at that, Tom Brady makes more for one completed pass. He had about 503 of them during the season and the postseason. He makes more money for one completed pass than our teachers with the same number of years and same dedication to their craft make in a year. We need to support our teachers. You all know that Virginia is not in the top 3 for teacher pay, but they're moving in a direction where they want to be in the top 3 for teacher pay and staff pay, not just teachers. So that's one of our priorities. As you look at the budget, knowing that 85% of our budget is people, knowing that this community has asked us, can we please have more in-person learning with the people, not the stuff, not the devices, but the people. We want more people time. We want that investment of our children with the people. That is one of the top priorities of our budget. Next slide. So some things in the budget just go up, and they are out of our control. So I say no direct control items. You have this in your home, gas, utilities, water, fuel goes up. We have leases for copiers and facilities. I'm going to skip local match, I'll come back to that. Legal services, contributions to pension funds, and of course, insurance goes up. Not in our control, yet we have to budget for any increases. And quite recently, you've read in the paper that the governor and the General Assembly are proposing a 5% raise for teachers. And that's a 5% for SOQ-funded positions. And that's just a short way of saying not everybody, not every staff member. They do give us compensation funds, and you can see that's a nice chunk of change, $1.6 million. But in order to accept the funds, in order to take that money, to use it to help with compensation, we have to do the required local match of almost $1 million. So there's no real free money when you have to match money. And again, those are things that we have to budget for in our budget. Next slide. So this outlines the many items that the board has generously spent so many hours discussing over the last several months. What is in the budget proposal? The salary increase for staff, 5% over the biennium, which includes this year and next year. A minimum wage increase of $11 an hour, which you heard there's probably conversation about that going up to $15 per hour. And if that happens, that's another thing that we would have to budget for. Tuition reimbursement for our staff. We currently do not have a robust tuition reimbursement program. And then you can see some much needed positions. A school counselor, part of that is dictated by the counselor ratios in the proposed budget by the governor. Psychologists, reading specialists, additional seats at the Gov School, preschool, our investment in our 4-year-olds and our 3-year-old program, which, by the way, my understanding is there is a lot of interest in pre-K 3-year-old program. I think our program holds 14 slots. I'm not even going to tell you how many people are interested in those 14 slots. English language learners, behavioral coaches, and a part-time athletic director at EC Glass are some of the things that the board has been discussing. Next slide. And if we're really going to do a progressive budget, our classrooms have to look different. We have to teach differently. Kids have to experience learning differently. So as we approach our budget, we really looked at what are the needs of our students, and let's build our budget around those needs. And again, next slide. Other things that the school board has considered. I've heard a lot about retaining high-quality staff, how we're not competitive. Our staff can go someplace else and make more money, and we don't want to be that place. We want to be the place that everybody wants to come to, Lynchburg City Schools. So again, some of the things that we put in our budget proposals that the board has been considering are our veteran teachers, to go back and look at what happened during that recession in 2008 and do even a tiny bit to make a difference in our veteran teachers. You can see some additional support, some coordinators for special education, having full service at our elementary schools during the summer. We continue learning all summer long. And then the technology, since we have given out more devices and more access to service, we have more customers. The parents and caregivers are also our customers. You'll see a network engineer, safety risk manager, and a data analyst for just a few. Okay, next slide. All right, this is my favorite because this is one that, if not explained, someone would look at this and say, Dr. Edwards, why does it look like instruction went down by $1.1 million, but administration went up by $1.6 million? We don't need more administrators while you're cutting teachers. If we're not careful, if we don't take a pause and really look behind the numbers and tell what's going on, that story could float out there as rumor and do a lot of damage for Lynchburg City Schools. So I did want to stop and just go back to what I said. Part of what you're looking at is just the operating budget. That's it. This does not include the money and the positions that are in our CARES funding. So that's number one. Number two, some things, again, with the state, have been reclassified out of instruction and they have been moved into administration. And we have this question all the time: is administration just everybody downtown? And the answer is no. You'd be surprised who is actually in administration who provides direct services to kids. So I'm gonna let Ms. Lakonich take that one and talk a little bit about this slide a little more.
Good evening. The administration category is actually entitled from the VDOE, Administration, Attendance, and Health. So it does include any board. It includes your executive administration, which is your superintendent, your deputy superintendent. It includes your information services, the equity department, your HR department, your fiscal services, your duplication. Those are your typical that you think that, in my mind, that are at the admin building. But it does include the attendance. So that's actually your student services department, and it includes your health, your psychologist, and your speech and audiology, because it goes into that attendance and health. So with some of the changes with the state reporting, it was problematic to have them categorized the way they were. And in speaking with the DOE budget office and our counterparts, just to get a feel of what everyone else was doing, We did make that change in the Department of Equity and Engagement. We moved those, and they were actually categorized up into the instructional support, and which not necessarily saying it's wrong. It's just because at the end of the day, we're all here to support instruction, but we felt that it was better categorized as being part of the administration team. And so that was 2 people that was removed, as well as the Department of Student Services, and that is your directors, some student service specialists, your truancy officers, the supervisors for counseling, and the secretaries. And the big thing is if they are categorized under the instruction, it has to be at a school location. And it was really difficult to say what services they were providing at each of the schools because it can change. So that totaled just under $1 million of just reclassification from the instructional category to the administrative, attendance, and health. And it is just a reclassification, and there's been no shift in any of those duties. And what I would like to say is just when you're looking at the instruction, that number is a net of a lot of things that's going on. So it does include the 5%, the school level, administrative advanced degrees, all the things that the board has put in there. It is in there. It's just offset with that reclassification of the administrators that I just spoke of, as well as the shift of funds to care. So there were going to be, the original CARES had $2.5 million, and that was, the application was written so that it was instructional positions. So that is why it came out of that category.
Okay, thank you. And don't forget, much of the CARES funding was to address learning loss. So some of what we're doing now, we'll continue to do in the fall. And in the summer are our tutors that we're paying, additional support for students. If we need some, we have this wonderful program, Tech After Dark, where the technicians are here. So there are a lot of services that we provide for kids that fall under the category of meeting the requirements for CARES funding, and that's where we put that. And again, going back to the strategy, we could have left everything in our operating budget and gone to our city to ask for what we needed. But we are really trying to be that team player here at LCS, and we are grateful for the amount of CARES funding that we have received, and we want to use it wisely to meet the needs of our students while also helping out our residents and our city as well. Next slide. Okay, so the next steps. First, I just ask you, if you're listening, watching, and I do appreciate everyone who sends me an email or text message or calls me to tell me something wonderful that a staff member has done for their child. Support our staff members. Yeah, thank them when you see them. They are going above and beyond, sometimes sacrificing their own family needs to meet the needs of our kids. We had staff members who have given up several Saturdays just to be at the vaccination clinics and help out. So that is the level of commitment. We have a new nutrition bus van, and we have staff members who drive food directly to students' homes. We have teachers who work during the day, tutor at night. We have folks who help parents log in. We even have people who will bring a Chromebook to your home if you need it. That's the kind of dedication that we have. So I ask you to please support staff members. Share this information with your neighbors and the groups that you're in. And again, contact City Council and ask them to support our schools and to support the school budget. And I will be doing a modified presentation on March 30th at 4 p.m. And invite you to either watch or attend the City Council meeting as well. Next slide. So I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present. I kind of went a little quick just so we'd have opportunity for public comment and give everyone an opportunity to speak on and speak about the budget. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edwards, and thank you, Mrs. McConich, for that absolutely well-detailed, informative presentation for our public tonight. And of course, you will be able to have that to capture it going forward. Investing with care. That now moves us to our agenda, wherein we have the opportunity to hear from the public. And so F1, public comments. And these comments tonight are directly related to our budget. And so in this budget public comment opportunity, BDDH for public participation, as is standard for our regular meetings and work sessions. Individuals are able to share information with us, either in person or in writing or voicemail. And tonight, the board clerk has informed me we do not have anyone by voice messaging or any comments in writing. And so we will entertain the public budget hearing comments from those who are in person tonight. If you are representing a group, you have 5 minutes, individuals 3 minutes, and we'll be delighted to hear you tonight. Obviously, no discussion about campaigning, profanity, or any of the gestures that are unacceptable for a school board meeting. And having said all of that, the two persons that I have before me at this time, Mr. Andrew Glover, who wants to discuss the budget tonight, representing the conservative parents of Lynchburg. And Mr. Glover will be followed by Dr. Carl B. Hutchison Jr., who will be representing tonight the NAACP in relationship to our budget. Mr. Glover and then Dr. Hutchison.
Good evening, Lynchburg City School Board. My name is Andrew Glover. I am an LCS parent and represent the conservative parents of Lynchburg, a group of over 220 Lynchburg families, teachers, and LCS staff members. Tonight, we'd like to take the opportunity at this public hearing to address major concerns that we have with the school budget. Unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of time to review the budget, as it was only posted in full on Friday night for public review. That's a grand total of 5 days for a community to review the proposed spending on the single largest and arguably the most important expenditure Lynchburg City makes. Equally unfortunate is that the budget that was uploaded for review was only 10 pages long, consisting exclusively of top-level lines, giving very few details on how the money is actually being spent. So tonight, while I can highlight a few of our concerns, please understand that these are made from a broad perspective and in absence of time and information to honestly, truly review. Both more time and more detail would result in our ability to provide better feedback with more nuance. As such, with such a lack of information, the best place to begin is to look into the past. In 2015-2016, LCS had an average daily membership of 8,171 students with a budget of $107 million, which equates to about $13,000 per student. This year, you're projecting only 7,486 students, which is over 500 students fewer. Yet, despite significantly fewer students, this year's budget is $126 million, $19 million increase, or roughly $16,500 per student, which is a 26% increase during student population decline. For perspective, a full-time 12-credit-hour semester at Liberty University is only $9,360 for tuition. So this budget you are proposing spends $7,140 more per student than the annual cost of college. As such, I have to conclude that either you don't understand the concept of a budget, or this budget that you are asking the community to review is in reality a wish list. A wish list that includes a paycheck for each and every one of you, despite you accepting the role as an unpaid volunteer position. If you wish to be paid, I don't begrudge you that, but take it up with City Council as a separate matter rather than rob our kids' education fund. Another item on the LCS wish list is over $1 million towards the creation of a, quote, remote academy. Unfortunately, the last school board meeting, there was very few details about this remote academy available. Yet we're being asked to approve a $1 million plus budget line item with the comment, we'll figure out the details later. That's not how budgeting works. Let me suggest an alternative to that, actually. VDOE has Virtual Virginia, a publicly funded online school, which has already been developed and ready to use now. They make a certain number of those courses available to division schools free of charge, and each course after those free of charge ones are $250 per student. So using your same $1 million, you can pay for over 4,000 courses. Virtual Virginia also gives you the ability to invest in remote learning on a variable cost basis rather than fixed, meaning you don't overpay for what you don't use, which is especially important given that you have no clue how many students will actually use LCS-specific remote academy. I'm running out of time, so let me go over a few other items rapid fire. Virtually no change in transportation cost, despite a pre-identified need. The document uploaded to board docs show that your proposed operating expenditures. However, it does not show what you plan to do with the $26.6 million grant funding, which is an awful lot of money not to know what you're doing with. With an anticipated 225 student decrease this year, the city funding portion should be reduced proportionate to the student population decrease. That would be a $1.1 million refund directly to Lynchburg City. Finally, Lynchburg City's enrollment has dropped over 500 students in the last 5 years and is a trend that is will likely continue unless you make changes. For perspective, that is about the same enrollment as most of our elementary schools. We've lost an entire school's worth of kids, so why are we not looking into school consolidation? Lynchburg School Board, this budget reads like a wish list with little regard to those who have to pay for it. You are like kids who have just received their annual Sears and Roebuck magazine, which I guess now is the Amazon Christmas magazine. It's great that you've circled and highlighted your heart's desire. We want those things too. They're not bad things. But like a kid, you're shopping with someone with money that isn't yours, and we can't have it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Representing the conservative parents of Lynchburg, Dr. Hutchison.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board, our superintendent, other school officials, I'm Carl Hutchison, and I represent tonight the Lynchburg branch of the NAACP. I noted that the previous speaker indicated that he was a member of a conservative group. That in itself creates division. I do not come to present a talk based on division. I came to applaud the work of the school board, the city staff. I have been ill for now on 3 months, 2.5 months now. And I've had the opportunity during that time of recovery to witness more of the work that is being done. Nobody here, nobody under the sound of my voice can appreciate the work that the Lynchburg City School Board and the Lynchburg City staff does in its day-to-day operations. I understand that there is concern about our budget. There should always be concern about our budget. The biggest thing that I'm concerned about tonight is that I couldn't see the pictures too clearly. But that's because of me. That's because of my vision. However, I know that there is a great deal of work that has gone into the budget. I know that you continue to do the very best you can for all of our students. And I understand that we serve an exponentially larger amount of students than any of the private schools in our community. Our private schools serve nowhere near the number of students, and that's not to say that they don't do a good job, because they do, but we do a good job as well. Our tradition of excellence continues to move forward. Our previous speaker also said that you are being paid somewhat maybe under the table. Maybe we need to consider offering our school board members a salary or a stipend so that in the future we can be like the other school boards in the state of Virginia. There are only 3 now that do not provide for a stipend for its school board members. Maybe we can consider that as we go forward. I commend you for your work. I hope that you have a good representation at council, and I hope that you will be able to move forward with the work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Carl B. Hutchison, Jr., representing the NAACP tonight. Thank both of you for coming, and unless the board clerk informs me that there's anyone else that has come before us tonight, we will now close that section of our agenda, and that moves us to section G, which is adjournment. And if there are no objections from the members of the board, this public hearing will now come to a close. We want to thank the public, thank all of our staff for investing in it. And if you would, Ms. Morrison and all members of the board, let's take a 5-minute break, and we will reconvene in 5 minutes with the start of our work session. Okay. We would now like to call to order our March the 16th, 2021 board works session, and we're calling this meeting to order, and we are thankful for the opportunity to have our discussion, and we do want to let our LCS community know that we so appreciate you tuning in to our work sessions and regular meetings and public hearings. And according to our policies and procedures, we certainly want all those in the audience to make sure that you are complying with all of the protocols for our meetings, including wearing of masks, etc. Tonight's meeting is live on our LCS YouTube channel and will be featured on our Channel 17 as a part of the rebroadcasting process. All right, thank you for that. We will now move to Section B of our agenda, which is electronic participation in the meeting. And tonight, in compliance with our policies, BDD, and the continuity of government, we do have one school board member who will be participating electronically for medical purposes, and a chair would entertain a motion to approve the electronic participation of school board member Susan Morrison at this time.
I move that.
Been moved by Dr. Gupta, seconded by Dr. Carter. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. Allow me to pause for just a moment and ask Dr. Edwards if she could just let us know who is participating electronically or get a gauge on that so that we can know all of our electronic participants.
Absolutely, and I'm trying to look at the list over there of electronic participants. Generally, it is all of our directors. Director Brown is actually here, along with Ms. Pugh and Ms. Laconage as our CFO. Online, I see Director Jordan, I see Angel, Mr. A. Garcia Ablanque. We also have some staff members, Austin Journey, who is helping out with the video Zoom. I can see Director Ethel Reeves, Director Beth Morris. Ethel is our Equity and Communications Director. Beth Morris is our School Nutrition Director. You're really testing me here. Flora Cardwell, who is our Director of HR. John Collins, our Director of Technology. Steve Gatsky, who is our Senior Director of Finance and Operations. And I think I got everybody. Did I miss anyone?
All right. If your name wasn't called, would you please acknowledge yourself? All right. I wanted to pause to do that because the beauty of electronic participation is it affords individuals to be engaged as if they were here. And I want each of us as board members to feel free, according to procedure, to engage electronic participants, and particularly School Board Member Morrison. Let me just verify that you are there. Ms. Morrison?
Yes, Dr. Coleman, I'm here.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. And so you feel free to interject, of course, and I will be intentionally calling on you at the appropriate moments for input, and particularly in voting. And so thank you all for allowing me to do that. That now moves us to our agenda approval, Section C. And this work session agenda has been featured for each board member to see, and the chair would like to entertain a motion to approve the work session agenda for our March 16th session.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda for the March 16th work session.
Thank you. Vice Chair Brennan has made the motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Carter. Any further questions? Discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All right. We were able to participate in our Pledge of Allegiance in the public hearing, and so we're going to allow that to suffice for this session tonight as well. And Dr. Edwards is gaining my attention.
Yes, because I forgot Director Janine Daniels-Bosher, who is our Special Education Director, who is also online, just in case there's some questions for her too. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and thank you, Director Bosher, for being present tonight. Having said that, thank you, Dr. Edwards. We will now move to Section D of our agenda, which has encompassing of school board committee reports. And of course, tonight, if there's a report, please present. If not, we'll move right along, starting with our Finance Committee Chair, Mr. Gary Harvey.
No report. We will be meeting tentatively next Tuesday.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harvey. Likewise, item 2 in this section, Governor School Committee, Mr. Harvey.
Due to absentee of some of our board members, we did not have a quorum, and therefore the meeting was canceled.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Item 3, Laurel Regional School Committee Chair, Dr. Sharon Carter.
No, our next committee meeting is May the 5th at 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Item 4, our STEM Academy, Dr. Michael Nillis.
No report.
Thank you, Dr. Nillis. And lastly, our Legislative Advocacy and Community Relations Chair, Mrs. Dale Evans.
We did meet. We have made the decision that this committee is going to go on to the May work session, and we discussed a new plan of how we're going to run this committee and what it's going to look like going forward after June. So it will be on the May work session, and we'll just pick it up then.
Thank you, Mrs. Evans, and thank you for the fine work that you're doing in that committee. It was a good meeting, and we'll look forward to our upcoming work session in May. This now moves us, Board, to Section E of our agenda tonight, and in Section E, there are 4 items that we will deal with, beginning with our Return to Learn update, and we're going to ask Dr. Edwards to bring forward the appropriate people.
Absolutely, and since this is a work session, we will be short with our update during work sessions, but I'm going to ask Ms. Pugh to give you a brief overview of what's happened.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards and board members. I'm going to keep it short tonight. We are continuing to work on at the elementary school level, increasing the number of in-person learning days for our students. So at the elementary schools, they've been busy planning 4 days a week of in-person instruction for our youngest students in pre-K through 2nd grade. And as you'll know from our announcement a week or so ago, those students will be returning to in-person learning on Tuesday, April 13th, which is the Tuesday after spring break. Teachers at the elementary level have reached out to those families in the last week regarding their intent to come in 4 days a week. And division-wide, I'm pleased to say that we only have a handful, about 6 students of pre-K through 2nd grade students whose families are choosing to have them switch to remote only. They're not comfortable with them coming in 4 days a week with increased students in the classroom. Transportation continues to work on a revised schedule of routes and times because bringing in more students will impact those bus routes, and those will be finalized next week. And we'll be able to have updated transportation information to all of our families no later than April the 2nd, so that they will know what those changes will be prior to us breaking for spring break. And we also have our principals and teachers at the elementary level that are continuing to plan for 4 days of in-person instruction for our 3rd through 5th grade students with a start date that is soon to be determined. We also have groups that are continuing to work on program offerings and opportunities for students for the summer. They're finishing up on those details. They're finalizing their budget and working with HR to post the positions and recruit staff for summer school options. And the goal is to have all of the details regarding the different program options out to families by the end of March. Additionally, we have 2 groups that are working on fall instruction, both in person and virtual opportunity. And they are hoping to send out a parent guardian interest survey that's to next week to all of our families, but also including our homeschool families. And this survey will ask them questions about their interest in either in-person learning for 5 days a week in the fall, or their interest in the virtual opportunity. And again, as Dr. Edwards mentioned in her budget presentation, there is a group that's continuing to work on the pilot program for 3-year-olds. And we have about 14 available slots, and we had a large number of applications come in the first week. I'm sure it has increased, but within the first week, we had 64 applications for that pre-K program. So those are the things that are happening. We've got lots of staff members, principals, counselors, teachers that are working together to really provide some additional learning opportunities and supports for our students in the coming weeks and months.
So, Ms. Pugh, just so that we're clear, the group that's working on 3rd through 5th grade is anticipating bringing students back in the fourth quarter as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then I just will add to that, because it's March, and about this time, if you're a senior in high school, there are 2 important events that usually come up. One is prom and one is graduation. And I recall last year, this was an area of just stress for us because we did not know what to do. So first, prom, we're still under the governor's restrictions for anything indoors being 10 persons, anything outdoors being 25 persons. So there's been no real movement in terms of if there's any excitement about having a large prom. We're not there yet in terms of anything like that. There has not been any change. In terms of graduation, we are anticipating some guidance still coming out in the near future. And hopefully the governor will give us some guidance before April 1st. And I just say that to say that I can recall this time last year, families wanted to know what we were doing about graduation, and I just don't want anyone to think that we are not communicating about graduation. We're just waiting for guidance, a little bit more guidance about graduation before we start sending out plans.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and I know that there's board member input. I would like us to allow Dr. Sinha to give her COVID-19 dashboard update. Then the chair will open the floor for a discussion regarding return to learn or any COVID-19 related discussion. Dr. Sinha.
A couple of things. The CDC keeps changing how they report stuff, so although I try very hard to keep these reports consistent from meeting to meeting, that's usually not possible. So the school metrics have changed a little bit. You'll see different color scheme. And some of these are, and they're only reporting them as of a week. And so the most recent week I could get as of today was the week ending March 6th. So you'll see what appear to be some inconsistencies with what I've reported. For example, they're showing new cases per 100,000 persons of 76.71. But if you do look at my new cases per week for Lynchburg City, you'll see that last week it did bump up to about 63 cases, and there might be a difference of a day or two in how they're doing those 7 days. So I just want to point that out. We continue to do very well. We did bump up to 63 cases a week last week, but we're down to 27 for the week ending March 13th, so that's really good. Another interesting thing is if you look at the age distribution, it's been pretty steady, but now we're seeing a big change where those 60 and over are representing a smaller share. I suspect that has a lot to do with vaccination since they were a priority group. I don't know that for sure, but that's my best explanation. Test positivity rate continues to go down, although testing is way down too. But typically when testing is low and there's outbreaks, your positivity rate will be really high. A high positivity rate can be indicative of an outbreak and insufficient testing. And then our vaccine rollout continues to go quite well. We're approaching 10% of Lynchburgers being fully vaccinated, and another almost 20% are partially vaccinated. And as we get more access to the Johnson & Johnson one and done, I expect to see those numbers climb. I know CVS and some of the other local pharmacy retailers have had growing supplies of vaccines, so I encourage everybody in the city, when you can, get that vaccination. And that's about it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sinha, for that rich information. The floor is now open for discussion from board members around return to learn or COVID-19 related matters. Dr. Gupta.
So, thank you, Dr. Edwards and Ms. Pugh, for making this presentation. The question I have is, if we have most of our teachers vaccinated, am I right in assuming that? What percentage of our teachers are vaccinated?
Of the ones who want it.
Of the ones who wanted it, I believe there's less, I want to say less than 100 that have not been vaccinated, and they expressed an interest in the Johnson & Johnson one and done, and so they have chosen to wait for that until we get those doses available. Director Brown, if you have additional information, can you jump in? About 70% of our students, of our staff indicated a desire to be vaccinated. So she can tell you of that 70%, how many have been vaccinated.
So, I'm sorry, is she saying something?
She's here, yes.
Yes, sir. We have 130 left that wanted the Johnson & Johnson vaccination. So as soon as that is made available to us, we will offer that vaccination as quickly as possible. We're looking at potentially offering that near the end of April. In regards to remaining vaccinations that we have, we just have to administer our second vaccinations, and we will be running 3 clinics to finish those out. So in terms of the staff that wanted the first vaccinations, and when we closed a week ago, all those that were still interested, we vaccinated almost all of those except for maybe about 10 right now that we needed to get in, that we had to reschedule for various reasons. Other than that, on Monday, when we just ran the clinic that we had at EC Glass, we were able to get in all of those other remaining, except for those that wanted the Moderna vaccination. So we are almost near complete when we're talking about vaccinating the ones that wanted to be vaccinated.
Dr. Gupta, you have an additional question?
That was the first precursor for my follow-up questions, if you don't mind.
Yes.
70% of the teachers are vaccinated. As per CDC guideline, in 2 weeks after vaccination, you attain the immunity. I'm able to visit my daughter in nursing home, which I have not done for a year. So what's stopping us from opening up the schools when 70% of our teachers are vaccinated? Means, why are we delaying it to wait till fall? It doesn't make sense. And honestly, it just baffles me. That's why I thought maybe 10, 20% are vaccinated. If 70% are vaccinated, we should start opening up for students who want to come to school. And that doesn't make sense. And I wanted to, but I can come back later on. I have a parent. I want to read some good ideas. I can do it now.
Are you raising a question, Dr. Gupta?
Yes. What's keeping us from not opening up the schools when 70% of our teachers are vaccinated?
Dr. Edwards, you can respond to the best of your ability.
Sure. Teacher vaccination is one factor, not the factor. So we also have the new mitigation guidance, which I shared with you last time, which we are shrinking the rooms to 3 feet, but not, or at least the desks, the children's desks to 3 feet. 6 feet is still the CDC go-to guidance. 3 to 6 feet is acceptable if you can't maintain 6 feet. Some of our classrooms have upwards to higher number of students where we still can't get all of the students in a classroom if the desks are 3 feet apart. So that's another factor. We still are operating in our buildings under the 3 feet. Another factor is school buses. We have not received any new guidance that says that we can put 2 or 3 students per seat, which is what we were doing pre-COVID with our bus driver shortage. The 1 per seat we were already doing, and you can do 2 if they're siblings in the same household, which we can also do, but we have not gotten to the level where we can pack our buses back to where they were, which would allow us to bring all of our students in. And the other factor is one of the reasons why we're starting with the youngest students first is the youngest students have shown to be the least likely shedders and spreaders. As we get into high school, I know that the teachers are vaccinated, but when you start looking at some of the 16, 17, 18-year-old high school students who are more on the, I say on the adult end of it, many of them have not been vaccinated. You know, they still may pose an opportunity to be shedders or spreaders. Probably not high, because we haven't seen that in our schools, but we've also been masked up in our schools as well. So those are some of the factors that, and I can't point to one and say that's the one or that's the one. It's a combination of factors. And I don't know if you want to add anything, Ms. Pugh.
I think the other factor that we have to consider, especially at the secondary level, is the staffing model. We started out, if you'll remember, remote only. And so all teachers were assigned classes and all of their students were remote. When we switched to some in-person hybrid model, some teachers, most teachers at the secondary level, are teaching two cohorts and teaching remote students at the same time. So we have some teachers who are teaching remote only and some teachers who are teaching in person, but for the majority of our secondary staff, they are carrying the load of both in person and remote. And those remote students may continue to remain remote, and it will be very difficult for us to staff and have teachers in front of students 4 days a week and continue to teach the remote students. So that's another factor that we have to consider with our older students.
Go right ahead, Dr. Gupta. One more statement, and then we'll move on to other members
All right,
of the board.
because I have a parent who wrote a very nice email, and maybe somebody can contact her. Her name is Jennifer. I asked her permission to share her name, Ms. Titson, and she mentioned one of the things is synchronous learning. This says it goes hand in hand with requiring students to attend class on hybrid days and then Zoom days on the days they are at home. Hybrid students, and that's the key, which basically you brought up, in both cohort and cohort A and cohort B would be considered one group of students, which we are not doing right now. And the teacher would create a lesson plan for the week and teach them as normally would to all students at the same time.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Gupta. And all of those thoughts are being held under advisement. And Dr. Brennan.
So I'd just like to start out by thanking the staff and the administration of this phenomenal job they've done dealing with this pandemic, going back to March a year ago when schools shut down, and the amazing shift that they've made to provide an education both remotely and in person is so well done. It's been such a model. But I really want to raise the question about getting the children, the students back to school sooner than what we're planning on. And it's based on several things. One is that as we were handed in our handout for this meeting, the VDH came out with interim guidance for pre-K to 12 school reopening just this month. And one of their comments was one that rang very similar, because it's one thing we've said all along, which is that school districts all have to be flexible and innovative. And scientific knowledge evolves rapidly, and local context is incredibly important. Decisions about instructional modality ideally should be made for shorter periods of time, e.g. 2 to 4 weeks, in response to changing disease dynamics, rather than longer periods or months ahead of time. I emailed you, which you may be able to pull up or not, but the current numbers that Dr. Sinha referred to, and you're just glancing at those, the numbers that we have talked about regarding this pandemic and the numbers that we've used to reopen the schools or close the schools really are dramatically have changed. And particularly for our area, the numbers have dropped, the percent positive dropped less than 5%. It really is very remarkable, and obviously the hope is that that will continue. And lastly, and I mentioned this several weeks ago, but we have more information now about the science and the transmission of COVID in the schools, and we know that schools are safe areas, safer than most communities are. The children are not a significant risk of poor outcomes from COVID, and that children transmit COVID-19 much less efficiently than adults, particularly children less than 10 years old. Outbreaks of COVID infection in schools are extremely rare and do not generally occur in areas where there's appropriate mitigation plans like we have, And where they have occurred has been mostly adults bringing it into the school from the community and not students bringing it to students or to staff. The other point is that, as we've said many times, that the number of students or children with mental health issues far outnumber the number of children who have died or suffered significantly from COVID-19. And that number of students who are really having trouble with mental health and emotional issues is continuing to grow as they're out of school. There is scientific data supporting at least 3 feet of distancing, and I think that's the CDC has recognized that by saying we can do less than 6 feet, and there's data to support that. There is no evidence that SARS-CoV variants, which people are concerned about, spreading through schools, that they'll act any differently as far as our mitigation plan, as far as transmission. As long as we continue to wear masks and do other appropriate things, they should not be a problem. And then as Dr. Gupta was commenting about vaccination, we clearly want to have our teachers and staff vaccinated, but neither the CDC or any other organization is requiring that as part of a reason, as part of a parameter we have to reopen schools. If you have mitigation in place like we do, it should be able to open it. So why do we want to open schools sooner rather than later? And I know most people know that, but just to reiterate this for the public, there's ongoing academic loss, including failing grades, which we've talked about recently, poor test results, such as the PALS results that we just received recently for K through 3rd grade, and it looks like they are going to do SOL teaching or testing this spring, which I'm sure will show significant disadvantages for our schools in general, not just our school, but all of those throughout the United States. And that many children cannot effectively learn, group, engage, socialize, be active, eat healthy food, or get support until schools are physically reopened. And so my question to the administration is that I know that we're planning on opening in the middle of April with K through 2nd grade. We have care funds that we have available to do a lot of innovative things. We know remote will probably persist into next year, that some people will still want to stay out of school, so that will still have to be there. But what are the real barriers? And I know Dr. Edwards has mentioned a few, but what are the real barriers for us to start earlier? For example, to do a soft opening of K through 12 at the end of the current period, which would be a week or two before spring break, or bringing back K through 5 in the middle of April rather than just K through 2, and really looking forward ahead to trying to get other grades back into school before we end the school.
And we are working on getting 3 through 5 back in school in the 4th quarter. Mm-hmm. We don't have an exact date. We hope to have that solidified in the next couple of days and shared with our teachers and then all of our staff members and our board members, as well as our community. Mm-hmm. We anticipate that will be shortly after we get our pre-K to 2 students back in. Mm-hmm. So we are working on getting all of our elementary students back in before the end of the school year.
Mm-hmm. And how about secondary and high school students?
We have not started that planning and that conversation for just the same reasons that Dr. Edwards and I mentioned when Dr. Gupta asked the same question. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of factors that go into the consideration of that: transportation, staffing, classroom space capacity, keeping the 3 feet social distance. And we do have classrooms at the secondary level where we would not be able to accommodate all of our students that could possibly return, keeping 3 feet of social distancing in mind.
And I think you really have to be, when you're looking at secondary and you think about a kid having, let's say, 7 different courses, well, what if only 5 of mine work? Am I kicked out of my 7th course because there's no room? Are you kicked out of the 7th course? How do we split that? What does that mean for the teacher? So while I love the idea of being innovative, I would challenge folks to kind of figure that out real quick, right? To come up with the model that says, well, yeah, we're going to offer a soft opening for everybody to come back, but if you don't get all your classes, is that an okay thing for families to say? We might have to cut a few, or you might have to not have your teacher because in that room, that teacher is full, but in this room, same class, same course, this teacher is not. So we're reassigning you mid-marking period or beginning a 4th marking period to a whole nother teacher. Some of the things that that we have, and I'm not saying we haven't thrown those things on the table, and we do a pros and cons list and wonder how are folks going to feel? How are students going to feel if they say, I could come back 5 days a week, but I won't have my same schedule. I won't have my same teachers. Or maybe, the teacher that's remote, I might not have that particular teacher. There are some things that as we're discussing it, because we still have to discuss it for coming back in the fall. There are lots of wrinkles, and I know on the surface it sounds easy. Just open the doors, put all the kids on the buses, and figure it out. If you've ever been that teacher, administration is not planning this in isolation of the people who have to deliver it. And let me say that one more time. The people who are delivering instruction, the people who are managing the children, the people whose classrooms that are set up, the people who have to figure out how to navigate these kids are in front of me. I don't have a classroom set up like the boardroom where I could be projected. I just have my laptop. How do I engage the 3 or 4 that are on my laptop and still move around to the 13, 14, 15 that are in my classroom? The people who have to do that, I would hope that we would want them involved in the discussion and the planning and what does that look like for you in your classroom. And when you do that, when you say, we value the input of the teachers who have to make this happen, you are also saying, we're going to give teachers the time who have to make this happen. We're going to problem solve with you, which you can't do in a short amount of time. And that's one of the struggles that we have faced throughout this whole entire year with doing things, even when we go back and look at our model of when we brought the pre-K to 2 in the fall, and then we turned around and brought in 3 through 6th grade, and then we waited and brought in the high school, some of the challenges that we had, and some of the things that still go on with, and I know families will say, I want my kid back, but I don't want my teacher changed. And that might not be a reality even for our pre-K to 2. We may have some adjustments that have to be made. So I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying it is not as simple as it sounds to just say, open them up. And the transportation piece is a real issue, given that we had a bus driver shortage prior to the pandemic. And that's with a 50, 60 passenger bus that could hold 50, 60 passengers. Now we've cut that in half. And that shortage still exists. We're still, if you look at some of the positions, I gave you a list of unfilled positions. You saw bus drivers on there and bus aides on that list of unfilled positions, even with the work that you've done to increase salary and add VRS benefits. We've tried to make it attractive. But that shortage is not just here in Lynchburg, it's other places as well.
Dr. Brennan, you have a follow-up?
Just to reiterate what I said to start with, I greatly appreciate, I know the board appreciates, and I'm sure families appreciate all the work that LCS administration and staff have put into this, and it's clearly, I think we all understand it's not just throwing a switch to make it happen. But I think since the beginning, the board has asked that we just be flexible and we be innovative about how we go about doing it, and clearly involving the staff and the families are a great way to do that. So thanks very much for entertaining that comment.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Thank you, Dr. Brennan and Mrs. Evans.
Having a background in education, I feel like I need to say, Dr. Edwards, the high school piece is totally on point. It is a very different bring back than elementary or even middle school. I do think, and a lot of them are adult age who are not vaccinated, and you're right, that comes into play as well. I think high school, as much as I would love my high school student to be back, I think they need the time to figure that out for high school. But I wish in April, as Dr. Brennan said, on April 13th, K through 5 was coming back, not just pre-K through 2. And I would love to see 6-8 come in 2 weeks later and have that group in and let high school wait until the fall. With the teachers and hybrid in high school and the class size, I understand how difficult that is. And I don't think it could be done well in such a short amount of time. And if we're not going to do it well, I don't think we do it until the fall. But that K through 5 piece, I think, is huge, and I think we need to have them all in there. And I worry if we are saying 2 weeks after April 14th, we're almost into May. School's out at the end of May. That's such a little time that I would love us as quickly as possible to get that through 5 in. And the other piece I want to throw out there, and I'm not sure if this is the right time to do it or not, is the idea of changing our quarantine dates to be reflective of what the recommendations are. I think now it's 7 to 10 days. We're still doing 14. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, do we go with CDC guidelines on that and stick with theirs? Is that going to be easier to maintain as a city than 14 days? Are we taking undue risk by saying, okay, let's change it? But I feel like if we're saying we're going to follow the CDC, let's follow them and do the 7 to 10 days and not have a 14-day quarantine. I know that's a different idea, but I was just throwing it all out there since we were talking about it.
Well, when it comes to mitigation, we're sort of in the middle of CDC and VDH guidance as well. So if you recall, when CDC changed their guidance, we had to wait, school divisions had to wait for VDH to give us guidance. So it's not always easy to just say which one I want to pick and choose if I have to work with a higher authority. And even within VDH, different health directors have different opinions about how things happen. And I'm going to say we were very fortunate here in Lynchburg. We had athletics. There were other places where the health directors, with our same numbers in the community, not the school, with the same numbers in community, they shut down athletics for divisions. So it's not as easy, and as the moving parts always move nicely together. There's other things that we have to work through and consider as well. But your point is well taken.
Ms. Evans?
As a follow-up to that, I mean, is it constantly changing? Because I feel like we've been the same the whole time. And with these numbers that we're getting, I guess I just want to know that discussion is happening. Are we looking at, hey, with the city numbers that we have now and the smaller percentages, perhaps we could go to that 7-day quarantine, because it certainly would help teachers as well. It's just not as much, it could help the whole division. So are those conversations happening?
Yes, absolutely. I do want you to think they're happening, but again, I just want to give you a visual. The team that is responsible for all the contact tracing and making sure that they do all that, that's the vaccination team too. They're also contacting all those folks, making sure that they show up. So while I applaud them on everything, I'm real cautious about burnout and just having them do too much all the time. And at some point, we had to pull priority. The priority for us when vaccines became available, you remember, we vaulted to like, all right, let's open EC Glass, let's get our staff vaccinated. And that entire team was taken to put that plan in place. And if you have been to those clinics and seen that work of art, then you understand the depth in which they're working and contacting, in addition to doing, remember, this is none of their regular jobs, in addition to doing their regular responsibilities. So yes, it may be moving slower than anticipated. It's just because we don't have the department of whose job it is to say, CDC changed yesterday, let's get together, let's make this change right now, and let's do this, right now. And we also, like I said, we have to have conversations with different entities before we make changes as well.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Is there any other board member that would like to comment on this matter, including Ms. Morrison? Dr. Millis?
Coleman?
Yes, Ms. Pugh.
I would like to remind the LCS community and our board that between this meeting and our next meeting in April, we have a significant break during spring break. And I would encourage our LCS community to remember about the interaction and the travel and the impact that we know happened after Beach Week last year, Thanksgiving last year, and the winter holiday. We saw numbers increase.
Morrison, so noted. Thank you. Dr. Millis?
Yeah, I want to express my support for bringing the kids back as soon as we can. Honestly, I'm a little disappointed that There really doesn't seem to be any real serious thought that's been given to bring the high school kids back. It's the working assumption seems like that's going to be next fall. One of the issues is going to be when the high school students come back, it's going to be a real transition. I think it would be helpful to get the kids back in school as soon as we can, even if it's the last 4 weeks of this school year. That will help, and it will help transition some of the students needing extra support for summer school. And I think we're trying to be all things to all people, and given the situation, that's pretty challenging because this is not a normal school year. We do have the mitigation in place. You know, students coming back to schools, they have to mask. There's no question about that. But there's plenty of experience around the country, in other states, other divisions, where they brought students back, and time again, the schools are not centers of transmission. You need to follow the mitigation protocols. And frankly, the CDC guidance really just isn't all that helpful. They're too afraid to take a stand, honestly. And this is a trade-off. There's no solution here. You know, you're trading off the potential for some students getting COVID infections versus the learning loss, the failing grades, the mental health issues, the socialization aspects. I don't think anybody really appreciated that when this started in March. But it's very clear that's a concern. And in terms of, we always say, you know, we want to make the best decision for the students. And you know, my opinion is the best decision for the students is to get them back in the school building. And in regards to CARES funding and the technology and internet access, the best technology we have, and I wish I had thought this on my own, but I didn't, the best technology we have is the school buildings. And getting the kids in there in front of teachers so that they can be taught. So I hope we think outside the box. It's easy to say, but I hope we accelerate our planning and bringing students back as fast as we can. I realize that this is a huge ask. It's clear there's an awful lot of planning and considerations that go into this. Staff has done a really good job. Overall, it's clear there's the amount of effort they've done is fantastic. I don't need to, I'm not trying to diminish that or minimize that at all, but the kids need to be in school.
Thank you, Dr. Nilles, and I am so thankful for the well thought out comments of each board member that has shared thus far. And Dr. Sinha.
Just a question, is it possible, I know there are CDC guidelines on the buses, but now that we're getting into warmer temperatures, perhaps opening windows on the buses could be a mitigating factor and help with that? I don't know if Dr. Brennan wants to weigh in on that. And even, I would really like to see us get our kids back in school 5 days a week, also even if 2 of those days are half days, where one cohort's in the morning, the other's in the afternoon, something like that, just to prime the pump for next year, get a jump start. I know it's a logistical nightmare. They might not be able to get all their classes in person, so they'd still have to do maybe one special subject course, hybrid, but yeah, it's time to try to get as many students back in as many days a week as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. That added another dimension to the discussion, and I'm thankful for it. I'm, of course, eager to move on to other items, but I will not rush beyond this until all board members are satisfied that they have articulated their concerns. Mr. Harvey.
I've heard several of my distinguished colleagues used the words like, encourage, hope, etc. I just wonder if any one of them would choose to offer a motion.
And Mr. Harvey, to your question about a motion tonight, this work session affords us an opportunity to present action items. I would caution the board member that would make such a motion that it does require a considerable amount of preparation. And if makers of motions would have them, it would be most helpful to do them in advance of a meeting. Having said that, the pleasure of the board stands. Dr. Gupta.
I wanted to make a motion actually to ask the school superintendent to open schools right after spring break, K through 12. I don't know if it's parliamentarian can say.
The chair would offer the motion. I think that motions tonight defy our ability to function effectively as a board with appropriate staff input preparation. There would be a need for a second, Dr. Gupta, for your motion.
I could not hear it.
All right, I hear a second from Dr. Millis. The floor is open for discussion. Could you restate your motion, Dr. Gupta?
We're asking school superintendent to open up the schools, bring a plan to the school board, and open up schools after spring break.
I cannot hear you. If you could lean into your microphone a little bit. I just can't hear what you said.
I'm asking to open up the schools after the spring break is, what days is spring break?
It's first week. We turn on April the 13th.
April 13th. So we have a school board meeting before the April the 13th.
No, we do not. We moved that because of spring break to give staff.
To the 13th.
Yeah.
Because, see, can I say something?
Please.
What's troubling me is this pandemic has been there for a year, and things have not changed. So what will change between now and August for us to be able to open schools in fall? I mean, bus problem was there before, bus problem is there right now. Teacher hesitation and fear was there before, is there right now. CDC guideline for 3 to 6 feet is there right now, may persist even in September. So there's no guarantee that we'll be able to open up schools if we continue the path we are continuing. So going back to what Dr. Brennan was saying, should we take a new path? Should we consider a new path? And that's what my motion is saying.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the motion, Dr. Brennan?
I always appreciate what Dr. Gupta brings to the table because it's always such a challenge. It's always such a good idea and generates a lot of discussion. I think that we need, I would not be in favor of this motion. And the reason is because I think that this administration has done a phenomenal job of dealing with a very difficult, very complicated situation for the past year. I think forcing them to reopen the schools trying to unwind that, I think is remarkably complicated. I think in light of our meeting last week that we had where we voiced the fact that we'd like to have the younger grades back into school, that was enough to have administration look into that and to adjust and come up with some ideas to get children back to school. And I think there's a very strong message now saying the same thing, that we like to do it in a reasonable, appropriate way in concert with the staff and the teachers. And I think forcing the administration to do it just with a motion, I think is probably not fair to them as far as what they've done so far and what they're going to need to do between now and getting the students back.
Dr. Brennan, thank you. But before I say, I want to make sure, Ms. Morrison, would you like to weigh in on this discussion at this time? I think they're trying to get her. All right. Well, while we're getting that straight, Dr. Gupta, did I see somebody's hand? I'm sorry, over here. Obviously I didn't. Any further discussion? Ms. Evans.
I agree with the points behind what you're saying of getting kids back in school. I don't like the idea of doing it like this and forcing people's hand before they're ready. I am hopeful, like Dr. Brennan, that we're being heard, that we're saying pre-K through 2 in April is not enough. We need to have kids back in school. But I don't want to put us in a situation where it's us against anybody. We all have to work. This has to be everybody in it together. It can't be we're forcing this to be done. We all want schools to open. I'm hoping that we could leave here tonight with the knowledge of we have been heard, and that I have no doubt they'll try to do everything they can to make those accommodations. But I think if we force that you're going to start missing important things along the way that they didn't look at because they didn't have time because we forced their hand. And I agree with Dr. Brennan that the work so far has been amazing, and I just don't want to make it be a forced decision.
I also want to say that while we haven't extended the school year, we have significant efforts to reach our students throughout the summer. We have built a very robust intensive summer program to reach those students, and they will be coming in 4 days a week. They will have all-day opportunities for academics and learning loss and enrichment. And so I don't want us to think that come June 2nd, we're closing our doors and waiting until August to re-engage with our students. We have significant efforts that will continue throughout the summer.
Thank you, Ms. Pugh. Dr. Carter.
I will not be supporting this motion because I really do feel that the administration and superintendent have been very deliberate and intentional in the way they're onboarding and bringing back students. And we do not know all of the technicalities and the different little details and nuances that need to be done. But as some have already stated, our voices were heard last week because now we're talking about the 3rd through the 5th grade, and then we're talked about the 6th through the 8th grade, and then see how the high schoolers can come on, also the secondary 9th through 12th can come on. And I think if we've made our voices clear, and I think this will be something that administration, they've been doing great with thinking outside the box and finding workable solutions, and I think a workable solution will be found to try to get as many students as possible in, and also just continue to communicate your story because they are doing amazing and fantastic things that we may not be aware of because they don't have all the details. And if you open up something or say something, then you get a million calls saying, where is this? And you don't have all the details to share. But what you can share, like the summer school program, and I know that we're not going to just sit here and just allow children to languish and do nothing until August. I'm sure there are things in place, and we just need to be confident that they're going to share the story when they get all the details, and also they're looking at these things. We already hear that they're already looking at 3rd through 5th grade, and so they'll continue to look. And people, regardless of what, there are going to be complaints, or they're going to be, when we opened up for this semester, one of the complaints is, well, you waited so long. Now we've rushed this. Can we hear what's going to be said? You waited so long, and we don't know this. We have to get schedules. There are plenty of things that need to be done. So I'm comfortable with what we're doing, and I'm sure that we have plenty more that we are going to do.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. I would ask our technical staff, if they haven't already, to assist Board Member Morrison in regaining connection to the meeting. And if that has happened now, I would like Ms. Morrison to speak. Otherwise, we'll wait until that reconnection has been achieved. All right, Mr. Harvey.
Yeah, I also will be voting against the motion. My point was to ask if a member was willing to make a motion was simply because I hear us as board members be supportive of this, and actually we own this. I might be incorrect. Dr. Edwards or Ms. Pugh can correct me on this, but I don't believe that just because we talked about bringing back 3rd through 5th, suddenly that became, they jumped to it and started planning that. I think they were already working on that. So I don't know that the comments that this board is making will necessarily have a huge impact where the administration suddenly has to change course on what they've been trying to successfully do throughout the whole year. So I for one, am very appreciative of what they're trying to do. I for one also would love to see our 3rd through 5th as well as our pre-K through 2nd, which I believe has been the plan all along that they're trying to enact, and we need to be patient with them and allow that to happen. But I also would say that I think that we're asking too much if we're trying to ask for middle school through high school to go back. We're talking 10 weeks, folks. And just to get our pre-K through 5th grade back, we all understand that that is a critical age group, and I believe that we need to allow the administration to focus on making that happen and making that happen well. So I will not be voting in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Mrs. Morrison has been reconnected. Ms. Morrison, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. I will not be supporting this motion either for the reasons stated by Dr. Carter and Mr. Harvey. Thank you.
Thank you, Morrison. Is there further make of the motion, Dr. Gupta?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is we are working both ways. I would love to have the schools open, but I'm going to be against this motion, and that's perfectly fine. But what this vote will clarify to the people is who really want the schools to open, who are just wishy-washy about schools to be open. My point is nothing will change. I've been watching for 1 year now. It's March, and we are still in K through 2. The CDC has opened even nursing homes, the most vulnerable population, to be able to see by their loved ones. So what is stopping us from to open up schools? It feels like I'm a professor giving an exam. The night before the exam, if you ask a student, would you like to postpone the exam? They'll say, yes, I'd love to because I'm not ready. So are we using the same student dilemma? Could I delay it by a month? Could I delay it by 2 months? And things will improve.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Dr. Sinha.
If I could offer a suggestion, maybe because the problem I have with the motion, it's a little too vague and just binary. It might be useful for all of us to see the results of a thinking exercise of what would it take. We know there are a lot of reasons why it's difficult to do, but what would it take to get the students in 5 days a week? What are the trade-offs? What would it mean? What would be the negative impacts, and sort of, what's at stake? What really would it take? And perhaps we could offer a motion to say, can you do this thought exercise for us so we know what's happening, and perhaps we can put something in motion. I don't know if that helps or not.
Are you suggesting an amendment to the motion, Dr. Sinha?
I'm not sure. I just know I'm uncomfortable with the motion that's out there. It's just, to me, it's too vague and too...
Well, the amendment takes precedent over the main motion. If you want to make an amendment to give further clarity to the motion maker, that would take precedent if you have an amendment. If not, I think that the clarity that you're bringing is in harmony with what I heard the superintendent suggest, that if we are going to be helpful, we need to come with some solutions, some thoughts that are thought through with all of this. And though I appreciate the courage of the maker of the motion and the one who gave a second to the motion, the difficulty is with assisted living facilities. There's not as much involved in that to make that happen as it is to negotiate triaging students and figuring out how all of this works and keep people together at one time. And that's why I cannot support it, not because I do not admire the courage. We just would have to have very specific solutions and appropriate time to make that happen. I would like to give the person who made the second an opportunity to say any additional comments before we call for the vote.
Well, I appreciate the comments, and personally, I'm a little reluctant actually to vote in favor of it, because I do realize there's a lot of planning and effort that needs to go forward. But comes down to, this is what's best for the kids. Get them into school as fast as you can. Get them back. If it's not after spring break, if it takes 2 weeks later, if it's third week in May and they're in school 2 weeks, that's worth it. So, thank you.
All right, if there's no further discussion from any members of the board, thank you again for this discussion. Maybe a little awkward, but again, thank you for bringing this up. I'm going to ask that our board clerk would call the roll. If you vote yes, you are in favor of instructing our administration to bring all grades K to 12 back to school when spring break is over. You vote no, that means that you are against that, and we will continue to allow our administration to work in the way that they are in doing what they can do to get kids comfortably back as quickly as possible. Madam Clerk?
School Board Member Evans?
No.
School Board Member Morrison?
No.
School Board Member Dr. Carter?
No.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
No.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
No.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha?
No.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey?
No.
Right. That's 7 to 2, and the motion is defeated. And so, is there any further discussion on Section E, items 1 and 2? If not, we will advance our meeting to E3, which
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any way that we can have any updates of this before we wait to our next board meeting? If we're going into April, you know, just so that we have an update of maybe what work's being done for 3 through 5, or...
Well, School Board Member Evans, certainly that could happen to the degree it can. The superintendent gives us a weekly update and other things, and so, you know, whatever pleases the board, but yes, ma'am, we hear you.
I mean, I guess it just to make, I mean, you know, I guess it's a way to follow up that things are being heard and things are just being looked at.
I can certainly do that. May I also ask a question?
Please.
Of the board. It would be helpful to us, because we understand what your wish is, what your risk is. And I would like to know from board members which ones are willing to say, if it requires that we go back to our regular seating on the bus, I'm in support of that. I will take that risk. I will take that liability, because it is a liability. We would be going against the guidance that we were given. But if that is one of our limiting factors, and you're asking us as administration to go back with what we have, what I would like from you is what level of risk and going to balancing, you know, we are very concerned about the social emotional health of kids, as well as the learning loss, as well as the safety with COVID. But what I would need from you all is that, and I'm asking just generically, not specifically individuals, but there are a series of questions. That would be one of them. Is this board, and I do think we would need to consult with both our attorney and our risk manager for our insurance, because there may be, if that's a way to say, if the buses are the limiting factor, then if we could put more kids on the bus to get them here, that's one question. The second question is, we're down to 3 feet. The guidance is 3 to 6. If we did a measurement of every room, every kid that is currently assigned to every room, every class, might not be able to fit in that class. So if I had 26 kids in a class, only 23 fit, and there's no other way to do a room switch, is this board okay with some children's schedule may have to change, some children may not have the teacher of record that they've had for the full year, and even if a parent were to contact you and say, I'm concerned, or I have a concern about that, is this board willing to say, but we need to stand by that because that will help us get kids in? So there are questions like that that would help us in understanding, and I am being serious about us needing to, particularly with the buses, to have that conversation about risk management and whether or not that is even an option. With regard to shift school is what we call it, Mike, when we talk about having kids come half day and part day, If you look at an elementary school and if you look at the number of hours of actual instruction we have to have and the amount of time it may take to transition between elementary shifts, is this board okay with if we ran 2 shifts of an elementary school day, kids getting out past 4 o'clock? Because it may take that. Are you okay with us doing that at a high school level, running 2 shifts, 5 days a week, a morning shift and an afternoon shift, if kids are getting out past the time that other places would have sports? We might have to look at, well, we won't be able to do all things for everybody. So I guess I need to know where the board is in terms of what your priorities are. I hear you saying, get the kids back in classes. And if that means that there are certain things that we can't do or need to do differently, what are you willing as a board to support to help us do that? And I haven't even thought through all of them, so please don't think that I have a full list right now. I just think that if I have a 2-week period to make this happen, I'm going to need a little bit more assistance from you all in terms of what that means for this board and a liability in terms of what we may take on.
The chair certainly is going to entertain Dr. Gupta first, then Dr. Sinha, but I do want to offer that board leadership, the chair and the vice chair, certainly be willing to work with the superintendent and try to figure out from board members what further direction we need to take regarding this matter in light of time tonight and the so many uncertainties about how that would proceed. Dr. Gupta, then Dr. Sinha.
I appreciate Dr. Edwards presenting 2 new ideas about 2 shifts. My concern was what will change between March and July for bus situation to improve. Are we looking at solutions like Dr. Brennan pointed out, allow parents who can drive their kids to school and be able to pick them out? Has that option been explored? We don't know. As a school board, I have heard only K through 2 and the problems which are there, which commonly is the bus and the classroom distance. But I'd like to hear some solutions. Because to me, the situation may not improve for everybody to be vaccinated by the time the fall rolls in. So what will we do in that case? We'll be back to where we are. And so the purpose of motion was to make sure we are thinking of bringing the students back, not just putting in on a holding pattern. I know the staff is working hard, but I'd like to see some different options available to the school board.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Dr. Sinha.
The examples you raised was what I was trying to get at. What are the obstacles? What would it take? And how comfortable are we? Because those then are specific things that we can vote on and have knowledge about. So, you have shifted your thing now to this list of what the things are, when before you said just have them all come in 5 days a week. So I think we need to have more information, know what's at stake, and to the extent possible, to have some of those presented to us, I think then offers more clear direction for you and your staff moving forward. I don't know if that's helpful, creates more work, confuses the matter, but that is something I could then vote for, because you know exactly what we're voting for.
Thank you for that, Dr. Sinha. And so I think that we've been heard, and I think that there are dynamics that we have to deal with. Do not lose sight of what Ms. Pugh stated earlier, that when I talk about triaging, we know all of the things that we got to do, and we got a lot of kids we've got to serve by the summer. We got to have teachers willing to serve and support, and so it's a lot that goes into what people can realistically do in a period of time. And so thank each board member. I do have a question of Director Brown. With the 130 that are left that desired vaccination, are we able to track if they get a vaccination through some other means? Or Dr. Edwards, someone could maybe.
If they report it to us, we don't have access to.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
And some staff have let us know, but.
Thank you.
I think I heard that she said that they were requesting the Johnson &
Johnson
Johnson
yes.
version, so they just have to wait till they get that.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And I believe Dr. Carter had her hand raised.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harvey. And very good. I'm familiar with Johnson & Johnson. I'm saying they may wanted to have gotten their vaccination somewhere else other than through LCS.
So Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
so some of our staff has received their vaccinations elsewhere. Many of those has let us know that they received it elsewhere, and we documented it because they might have responded yes to the survey, or some just gave us a courtesy to inform us as well that chose to go somewhere else and get their vaccination, sir.
Thank you, Director Brown, and thank you for the incredible work you and your staff are doing during these unprecedented times. That's a yeoman's task to accomplish. Dr. Carter.
Just wanted to just add something to what Dr. Edwards stated. When you have your little Johnny or Brianna or whatever at school, and right now that's one of the obstacles or a concern, that trying to figure out what students are going to stay with what teachers in what class, and that's a big concern for parents. If your child is doing great in a classroom and now all of a sudden they may have to move or have a new teacher, and then we get an email, will we support our decision? And the liability, that's a big issue, major issue. And we talked about this at the very beginning last year about what mitigation or what liability will we be comfortable accepting during this process. So I think we have a lot to think about, we ourselves.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. All comments well said. At this time, thank the board for your thoughts, and we will continue this return to learn discussion. And as the public can see, this is discussed every work session and in our regular meetings with robust information and discussion. Now we move to section E3, which is a budget transfer request. And our superintendent is bringing a recommendation at this time, and I would like for her or the appropriate person to explain this action item. This is before us for action tonight.
Yes. So several meetings ago, I had shared with you that some of the savings that we had from not filling every position immediately in July and kind of waiting until we had a firm plan of when children were going to be in school, when sports were going to start, a whole host of things. Also, there were some positions, with each position we take a pause and see, is that something we need? Is that something we need right now? Is it something that we need to repurpose? And the other thing that we wanted to do with our building principals is to say, we're not sure what you need during the pandemic. So, as you get into it, let us know what those things are and what kinds of things are required to help you be successful with your kids. So I alerted the board that now we're at a point where we may be doing some of those transfers now that we're a little firmer with the sales tax and what we have in the current year. So what you have before you, and again, we are thoughtful and mindful in our try. Originally, we had devices for students in grades 3 through 12. We provided families with devices if they needed it K through 2. We've been managing and working with families, and there was a request, and rightfully so, to get devices for children in kindergarten and first grade. So you will see a transfer to support that. You will see a transfer to support what are called ConfTel units, which we had some that are, we piloted in some classrooms. Unlike Zoom, where my camera is on my laptop, so for me to engage, and when I taught, I walked around the room. I didn't sit at my desk. I engaged with the kids. So for me to be talking, if my laptop is here and I go to work with Miss Evans or that group and I'm trying to instruct from that side of the room, a laptop with a kid on a Zoom, he or she may not hear me. And we've experienced that sitting in the same room talking to one another. So having a laptop, which is what our teachers have, and just Zooming without carrying it, which I won't do because my tech folks are looking at me and I may drop it, so that I have that constant face-to-face with kids and constant face-to-face with kids in person. This ConfTel unit is more of a camera-like system that would allow a little bit better than just carrying a laptop. So we were piloting them in classrooms. Some classrooms were already doing this, but we were in no way outfitted with, all of our classrooms in Lynchburg City Schools. You'll see some additional units for that, as well as some upgrades for streaming and recording, which are some of the things that our teachers are doing. So we've taken where you see there's been an administrative vacancy in C&I that we didn't fill all year long. We had some instructional assistant vacancies because our class sizes are smaller and we didn't need as many instructional assistants. When they retired, we did not remove any positions or fire anybody. I don't want anybody to misunderstand that. These are positions that were either vacant or unfilled or retirement or attrition. So we're asking the board to consider for the schools, and this is things that they want to use in right now, to transfer money from the line items listed there from your personnel savings to non-personnel lines for purchases of those items.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, our superintendent. And this is for action in harmony with Goal 3 of fiscal responsibility. What is the pleasure of the board, Dr. Gupta?
I'd like to make the motion to approve this.
Dr. Gupta is willing to make the motion that the request to transfer $700,000 from our personal savings for the items listed, and likewise $700,000 transfer to our technology non-personal line items as stated here. Is there a second?
I'd like to second that.
Motion has been seconded by Dr. Brennan, made by Dr. Gupta. Any further questions or discussion? Dr. Gupta.
I like the idea of ConfTel, so thank you for bringing it up. That's an excellent technology. Hopefully it will provide uninterrupted, noise-free instruction for our students. So thank you for bringing it up.
Further discussion? Ms. Morrison, any comments on this matter?
No.
There are no further questions or discussion on this matter. Then we will call for the vote, and if you are voting yes, that means you support the motion made. If no, then you're not in support of it. Madam Clerk?
School Board Member Evans?
Yes.
School Board Member Morrison?
Yes.
School Board Member Carter?
Yes. Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
All right, thank you so much. That moves us now to E4. And of course, E4 is a long-awaited item, and that will basically bring us to the end of the work session. As chair, I would like to ask the board if they would like to take a break. If not, we will continue with this discussion at this time. Is there anyone that needs a break? All right, no one is acknowledged. So, as chair, if you would allow me to just acknowledge 3 parts to how we want to dispatch of this potential action item tonight. At first, so that everything will be clear as a board, we would like for us, number one, philosophically, if you will, to affirm or disaffirm the notion that this proposed budget is undergirded by the utilization of care monies not only for stuff but staff. And so we'll have a brief discussion about that, or necessary to the board, and then we'll call for a vote that we affirm the undergirding of this budget, or the utilization of care funds for the operating budget proposal FY 2021-22, that CARES monies would be used in that way for people or staff along with stuff. Once we dispatch of that, the second piece would be that the board would recognize that after several deliberations, we were able to determine which items we wanted to remain for consideration at this time. And those items you should have before you in your packets. If there is something that you want to revisit, that would be an opportunity for you to bring that up, and we will either reaffirm that or remove it as an item from the proposed budget. And then lastly, after those 2 matters are dispatched of, we will give thought to approving the budget in whatever state it would be in, or disapproving it until it can be approved. If we're not able to complete our work tonight, it will require the board to come back together next Tuesday and reschedule our Finance Committee meeting, because Dr. Edwards has already stated a need to present before council, and we have to get this done prior to April the 1st. And so that would be how we are going to function or to proceed. Any questions on how we're trying to move forward tonight? And I would try to keep us in that vein. First of all, Dr. Nillis?
Well, I have two questions, but the second one needs to wait till we come to that part of the budget discussion. The first one on the voting on the use of CARES funding, is this a requirement that we need to approve the use of the CARES funding? I'm not quite sure.
No, sir, and the chair does not want to acknowledge it. I just want to make sure that the board is foundationally, philosophically in agreement with that process, so that no one feels as though that we just forced anything. Some of the CARES money is not just being used for stuff, it's being used for staff. So on that point, Dr. Gupta.
No, Dr. Edwards has been very transparent. You did the Zoom meetings last week to go over each of the items. And we have discussed them item by item, some of which I disagree, but I'm ready to vote this budget forward. Because we have done enough discussion on it. We had opportunity to ask staff and Dr. Edwards questions for 2 hours. So personally, I'm willing to move this budget forward. Although I may not agree with every item on this budget, but I'm going to support her and move this budget forward.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Dr. Nillis.
Yeah, since Dr. Gupta brought it up, my question on reconsidering the items, individual budget items, we all voted on each item. I mean, per Robert's Rules of Orders, I can't make a motion to reconsider an item that I lost that vote on. So I'm kind of aligned here with Dr. Gupta that, you know, there are things in here that I don't like and didn't support at the vote, but from an overall budget point of view, I think I'm ready to move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Nillis. This chair will concur with both of you, but this chair does not want, I've only heard from 2 of you, and we're coming to you, Dr. Carter, but we do not want this budget process to move from here over to council if there were any competing thoughts. And in previous budget iterations, board members did have an opportunity to revisit items. And we did not want to take that right away from this board. All right, Dr. Carter, and then I see Ms. Evans.
I have to agree with Dr. Gupta. I think we have seen this gone into very intense details and talked about it and expressed our concerns, so I'm ready to move this budget forward.
Mrs. Evans.
I agree with most of that, minus the fact that when we did, I had written down the last time we went over everything, and we did not go back to after Dr. Gupta talked about changing his insurance piece, that he was against that.
No.
We never went back to talk about that. We said we'd do it later. So that's the one thing on this budget that still gives me a lot of pause, because I think we left that with some discussion still lingering.
Well said, Mrs. Evans. Thank you so much. And Dr. Gupta, we'll give you a chance to clarify, but Mr. Harvey.
Yeah, I will be voting against if we're taking a vote to move this budget forward, because I specifically asked the question during my interviews that we would have the opportunity to go back and revisit this. I asked for clarification that my understanding when we originally went through this list was we were voting to put the items on the list for consideration. And I was told repeatedly that we would have the opportunity to kind of review the budget. So I don't want to just pass this budget through quickly like that. Because I do have concern about 1 or 2 items, and as Dr. Nillis has stipulated, you know, if we have the ability to bring up those items for further discussion, and what I understand the board chair saying in the past, we have done that, and that will be allowed, then I think that's what we should do.
And we have, and my almost 7 years on the board, I know I'm accurate with that. Ms. Morrison, would you have anything to say?
I agree with Dr. Gupta and that I'm ready to move this budget forward. We've been discussing this for months, and we've asked questions and gotten answers. It's been out for public review, and I'm ready to move it forward as well.
Thank you, Morrison. If there's no further comments, if the chair prerogative to rule, it would appear to me that no one is in objection to the first area of affirming the utilization of CARES money. At this time, members of the board, our veteran board members as well, we have always had an opportunity to, before approving the budget, to give persons an opportunity to share thoughts about matters. And unless someone would overrule me, I would like us to go through that task and entertain now any items. And since Ms. Evans brought it up, let's go immediately there and give Dr. Gupta an opportunity to clarify his comments relative to health coverage for board members.
So that comment was about a speech I was getting about the insurance and compensation against when the other person or persons were approving positions. So I said, let's have a deal where you withdraw the position approvals, new positions, and I'll change my vote. But as I said, I don't like everything in this budget. I don't like this $2.5 million, $3 million of positions, which I don't think are sustainable. I've been very vocal to Dr. Edwards about that. But having said that, I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to make a motion to approve this budget as presented by the superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. So in other words, you are stating that you remain in support
Yes.
of the coverage. All right, any other board member would like to bring up any particular item, realizing that it is clearly the will of the board that we move forward, but I would like to, is there anyone who, Mr. Harvey?
I continue to express strong opposition to the family health insurance policies for members of this board. I understand that we all work extremely hard, but I would argue that probably, with the exception of maybe the chair and possibly the vice chair, any of us spend more than 16 hours a week on the school board job. So that would clearly not even count as a part-time position in any business where you would be afforded full benefits such as this. In addition to that, the cost, the premium cost, is $62,775 for each member of this, cumulatively. Then, in addition to that, remember, we are self-insured. So every single doctor's visit, every single claim that goes against that health insurance policy for any members of this board, including their families, brings costs to the school system. We need to be very cautious about this, folks. And therefore, I would not vote to move this budget forward as long as that item remains on the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. At this particular time, I do want to acknowledge as chair that I am completely in favor of jointly the information that Ms. Laconich has included in the administration portion of the budget relative to stipends for school board members and health coverage. The code permits it. 129 school boards are in the same situation as we are in, and they provide that where those boards have that opportunity. And I think it's an equity issue, and I think that persons have the right to accept it or not accept it, and I will be fully supporting that. The school board is not a second-class citizen, and so the opportunities that are afforded to council are also afforded to the school board and should be so governed. Ms. Evans.
I'm going to agree with Mr. Harvey. We are not employees of the school system. This is a volunteer position. I understand the stipend piece, and I can support that. The cost of this health insurance to be put on Lynchburg City, I just find that to be wrong, that we would ask Lynchburg City to pay for health insurance for the board. I don't see that as, I'm not sure there's any board you're going to be on that you get health insurance. It's not your job. It's not, like you said, the time. I understand the stipend, and I don't think it makes us less than second-class citizens to not be offered health insurance. I don't think that dictates the importance of us or not. And I'm also very firmly against Lynchburg having to pay this.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Any further discussion on this? Dr. Nilles?
I mean, is it appropriate to make a motion?
Right now, what ultimately is going to happen is this is going to be revisited, and I would hope that we would bring both of those together, and a motion would be in order for that. Dr. Gupta?
I make a motion to include health insurance and stipend in this current budget.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's seconded by Dr. Brennan. Is there any further discussion? And we will have a roll call vote on this matter, either be voted up or down. Dr. Nilles?
Yeah, I'm not going to support this for the health insurance. It's not our money. I don't know why we're signing ourselves up for this kind of benefit. You know, one person has a bad experience, and you can run upwards of $80,000 for claims a year, and that comes out of the division. So I don't support this at all for the school board.
Thank you, Dr. Nilles. Dr. Gupta?
You know, I always hear the word, we are LCS family. And here I'm hearing the words, no, we are different than the other people. So I'm seeing divisions being created, but that's fine. So let's see how the board feels overall.
All right. Any further discussion? Dr. Carter?
If I'm understanding this, if you have health insurance, if you want to keep what you have, you don't have to accept.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And you don't have to accept the stipend or the compensation.
Correct. Dr. Brennan?
And just to clarify for myself, my understanding is that we are not doing this so much for current board members, but we're trying to do this as a way to recruit people to come and be willing to spend the time that we spend on the board, and particularly people who may not have the ability to have their own health insurance. So I think we're trying to reach out to a population of the city that would add to this board, and this would be a benefit for them. So I agree with this staying together, and I would vote in favor of it being passed.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. If there's no further discussion or questions, again, Mrs. Morrison. Ms. Evans, please.
So you have to vote for both of these
The
together?
maker of the motion.
Yes to this, okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The maker of the motion and the second is to wed them together, and you'll be voting up or down them together. All right. Ms. Morrison, I didn't want anything else you would like to say on this?
I'm ready to vote.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
School Board Member Evans?
No.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nilles?
No.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey?
Strongly no.
63 yes.
Motion carries 6-3, so that item will remain. Is there any other item in the budget? Here in the readiness to move to approval of the budget, is there any further item that needs to be reviewed tonight? If not, the chair would entertain a motion at this time for the approval of proposed operating budget FY 2021-2022.
Make a motion that we move forward with this.
Didn't you just do that?
Yeah.
Excuse me, no, that was, no.
His motion was to move the budget forward.
No, it was not.
Including.
No, it was not. No, it was not. The motion.
Can I make a motion?
The motion that we just voted on was pertaining to the item concerning the wedding of the health opportunity and stipend together. That was voted affirmatively 6-3 to remain in the budget. Now we are dealing with, are there any other items that needed to be reviewed? I haven't heard any, and the will of the board is just to move to a vote. Now Dr. Gupta is making a motion to approve the proposed operating budget FY 2021-2022, and then therefore instruct the superintendent to move forward with that in terms of future presentations, et cetera. All right, was there a second to the motion?
Second.
It's seconded by Dr. Carter. All right, any further questions or discussion? Hearing that, Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll. If you vote yes, you're in favor of the operating budget proposal as presented. And if you vote no, that means you are voting it down. And if that were to happen, then we would have to have further discussion. Please.
Since we have spent so much time on this budget, it's such an important issue, can we just be sure there's no other discussion that needs to be held by the board?
I'd be honored to do that, Mr. Vice Chair. Is there any other concern that any board member has before we call for the vote?
Point of order, there's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nilles. Therefore, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
School Board Member Evans?
No.
School Board Member Morrison?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nilles?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey?
No.
All right. Thank you. And the result 7-2.
7-2.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, and let's, in a unified way, thank you all for allowing us to do that in the way that we did it. We have to stick together, and of course, our protocol suggested we would now move together in full support of this proposed budget. And Dr. Edwards, we'll be backing you up on the 30th when you go to council. All right? I feel like clapping if nobody else does, and I'll leave it at that. All right, thank you all so much. That now moves us to our next item on the agenda, which would be F, informational items. And our Tuesday, March the 23rd meeting would go forward as planned in light of approval of the budget tonight. And so that will be at 3:30 in the administration building, Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Thank you so kindly. All right, next item is the, well, that's that. And the next school board meeting will be held on Tuesday, April the 13th at 5 p.m. here in Dunbar Middle School Auditorium. Thank the staff for the excellent way and for our tech people. The mics are working nicely, it appears, and everything has been moved nicely. And we thank each of you for all of your help in that regard. Mrs. Evans has indicated to us what's going to happen in May. And therefore, is the April the 13th meeting, obviously, is canceled due to the rescheduling. And the next school board work session will be Tuesday, April the 20th. All right. Is there any comment any other board member would like to make before we close out? Dr. Gupta.
Is this a comment time?
I'm going to provide that now. Yes, sir.
So I have a long list to read. I want to thank to the Lynchburg City School Student Services team for taking a leadership role in helping to vaccinate our LCS family, as well as other members of the community. Their hard work has tipped up the scale in favor of our fight against COVID. Their dedication has transformed the possibility of our students returning to brick and mortar into reality. Thank you to the Student Services Director. I hope you all join me, Latanya Brown, and Student Services Secretary Tanisha Thomas for organizing the registration list. And I want to read out the names of people who were involved, working about 80 to 90 hours a week, vaccinating not only LCS, the City of Lynchburg employees. Latanya Brown, Director of Student Services, Tanisha Thomas, Secretary of Student Services, Dominique Foster, Jade Smith, Nurse Coordinator, Andrea Bryant, Beth Barbola, Michelle Revija, Deanna Boyer, Veronica Douglas, Chantel West White, Rondi Cook, Belinda Carter, Deborah Crawley, Sheila Roach, Nicole Younger, Clara Peterson, Jill Wood, Courtney Langolis, Virginia Tyree, Robin Webley, Alexis Harlan, Rachel Phillips, Jennifer Kern, Kim Evers, Tracy Baker, and I apologize if I pronounce your name wrong.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta, and I applaud that as well. And Mrs. Evans?
I just wanted to say I went to the SMILE presentation this week. I know Mr. Harvey was on there, and Dr. Edwards, and there was a presentation from the students at Payne about the book project they did, and they were amazing.
Excellent.
It was the best Tuesday Zoom that you could have. It just, they were amazing. Their teachers over there were amazing. The community help. I just was super proud of them. So if you haven't seen it, email the principal at RS Payne and see if you can, I know they copied the Zoom, recorded the Zoom, see if you can get it. It's worth going back and watching.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Any other school board member would like to have a comment before we close out? Dr. Carter?
Just want to ask all that want to support us to please join us at City Hall from March 30th when we present the budget to support our superintendent. And also for parents and others, sometimes we take people and positions for granted, but I know we know the importance of teachers and just the impact they have and the importance of schools and our leaders. So just keep that in mind as they come back, and so they'll come back ready. I know they'll be ready, but also just excited and willing to learn.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Dr. Edwards, what time is that on the 30th before council so that the public can be clear?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, thank you. Any other board member? Ms. Morrison, any comment?
I'm really looking forward to joining the board in person in our April meeting. I have learned a lot from Zooming in, and I certainly understand the students' point of view really well now. But thank you all, and I'm looking forward to seeing you.
And we'll be eager to hear those reflections. Thank you for your service to the board and for your participation tonight. If there are no other comments, this meeting is adjourned.